It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday, the 22nd day of January 2013. I am your host, Alex Jones, and we're going to be live here for the next 3 hours. And we do have a guest who's going to be joining us a little bit later in the broadcast. In fact, several guests. I'll tell you about that information coming up in the second segment here today. More about why Max Keiser is going to be joining us. And also Lloyd Chapman popping in. Obama is considering shutting down the Federal Small Business Bureau. Just amazing information. I mean, why even have it there? They already don't give the contracts to small businesses anyways. So we're going to get a quick update on that continued destruction of our economy while telling the public the government's doing everything it can to get the economy going. The name of the game is economic domination. That's how we're being dominated. But the globalists want to back that up with a physical domination. Sometimes I take off for 3 or 4 days and the so-called vacation turns into more work than just staying at home. But I was able to take off 3 days and go down to Big Bend, where I hadn't been in decades, down on the Texas-Mexico border in southwest Texas. Very romantic scenery. The desert speaks to a man's soul, I guess, just as the sea does. And I just had a lot of epiphanies, clarification. It's good to slow down sometimes. And every time I do slow down, I realize how much I do need to take a pit stop. Just because then I'm more focused and more clear. And it's the same for everybody, but I feel completely rejuvenated. And it's probably the high mountain air and hiking up mountains and getting in the hot springs, the natural hot springs there by the Rio Grande, and watching the Mexican ranchers ride around on their horses. Look like, right across the border, look like something right out of a Western. Just very romantic scenery. And, of course, public school educated people will think romantic means just like you take your wife and do something romantic. No, I mean, romantic, for some people out there who I know don't know what I mean by it, because sometimes I get emails when I talk about something being romantic. Romantic, the romantic novels, or people in ships and storms, or astronauts going to the moon is romantic, or beautiful scenery, or things that stir the heart and the soul. That's romantic, and just very, very good for the soul. Also, there's no Wi-Fi there, and cell phones don't work anywhere but up close to the top of mountains. I'd have to get up on the high up on a mountain and sit there and transmit with my cell phones the 2 videos I did shoot while I was there to the town 30 miles away at night with the little blinking lights far away, line of sight. Just amazing technology. I'm going to attempt to get into all of the news when we come back, and it's just more of the same, more confirmation of just how much trouble we're in, but more facets of the enemy as more detail is filled in as it gets closer and closer. In fact, in many cases, the tyranny's not close anymore. It's sitting on top of us, spitting in our faces. It is all over even mainstream news that Western governments are really running the al-Qaeda groups in Africa who are blowing up chemical plants and taking hostages and things like that. The African invasion was set up 4 years ago, even before Obama was put into office 4.5 years ago. And that's why he's the black face, so they can sell that. So the left won't say anything because, I mean, he's black. It must be okay. They just use that as an emotional cover for what they're doing, but it's pretty amazing. Headline, London Independent, terror in North Africa. Are Westerners pulling the strings? And the French, the U.S., and others are already in place there, but now they're invading en masse. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Alex Jones. I am a defender of liberty. I am very upset about the tyrants that are taking over our planet. And I am very disgusted by their open attacks on all of our basic liberties, not just the Second Amendment. And that's why I'm on air, to try to set brush fires in the minds of men and women everywhere to defend their freedoms that were hard fought and hard won by our forebears. Now remember, the United States geographically is really a small country. And we've only been 5% of the world's population, roughly, in the last 100 years. Those numbers have stayed about steady. We're currently about 5.5% of the world's population. But we had half of the world's wealth. Half of the world's wealth. And now we're losing that wealth. Why did 5% of the world's population have half the wealth? Because we kicked the royalty out. We kicked the monopolies out. We kicked the power combines out, who always take over and always seek to make everyone else poor and dependent. And then incredible poverty always follows. That is what these oligarchs do. That's what they set up in the Mesoamerican kingdoms, in Central and South America and Southern North America, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the whole Mayan culture. That's what the ancient Babylonians establishment. It's what the Egyptians established. It's what the Romans established. It's what every other culture establishes, a form of feudalism. It is not an accident that they're trying to make us poor. This is a designed, global, engineered program. All right, I have got so much news that I want to cover here today, since I was out Friday, Sunday, and Monday, and I want to just thank Paul Joseph Watson and, of course, Mike Adams, Rappaport, and others, and the crew. They all did a great job. Driving back from Big Bend yesterday when I was able to get internet, I tuned into the iPhone app and listened to large portions of Friday's transmission, and just amazing information with Mike Adams on that broadcast. And obviously I called in on Thursdays or Friday show myself. But there is just so much to cover. And so let me just go over some of the headlines that we're going to be talking about here today. Nobel Prize nominee Obama asks military leaders if they will fire on U.S. citizens. Shock claim purported to come from one of America's foremost military heroes. And Paul then links to the Army training manual from 2010, where they have begun to openly train to take on American gun owners and confiscate our firearms. That training predates that, but now it's public. And so, I mean, my point is, why even go with the claim, even though we're tracking down this individual to get him on? I mean, it's all right there out in the open already. That's what Homeland Security is a system to wage war against American gun owners. So we're going to be going over that report. Also, Obama's inaugural address, Second Amendment is obsolete. He says that when the times change, so must we. I guess we're going back to ancient Rome where slaves were disarmed. So we've got that report. CNN Communist Network trying to shove gun control down our throats. We're going to go over some of that new push. And some more good news. CBS News reporting Missouri sheriffs, a whole bunch of them, pledge not to enforce Obama's gun control laws, saying they're unconstitutional. That's also being reported by NBC. We now have Texas sheriffs coming out and saying the same thing. So it is spreading. You see, the sheriff is a constitutional office, and sheriffs are elected representatives, and sheriffs in an emergency are the head honcho in the county. They can actually declare martial law. But instead, you've got the federal government trying to dissolve sheriffs through the states, trying to offer money if the counties And if the cities will get together and either get rid of the sheriff outright, or if they can't do that, make them unelected and a creature of the system. We're going to be going over that report today. And then coming up after I've had a chance to get into the Second Amendment attack, the latest developments there, and the economy, we're going to cover the London Independent and several other mainstream articles. Terror in North Africa. Are Westerners pulling the strings? And the Algerian prime minister has come out and said, basically, these are white commandos commanding a bunch of jihadis, taking people hostage and blowing things up. And then the West gets to go in and invade. The commandos pull out, and the West then attacks empty facilities, but then gets to occupy in the name of defeating an enemy. And that's what al-Qaeda has always been. It's a simulant that the globalists have attack or take the blame for an attack that's actually carried out by Western powers, the criminal elements that run us. And then you have the excuse to invade and take over the region. And every African country has either had U.S. troops or NATO troops under AFRICOM added to it, or they've built up on the borders of those countries. And, of course, we told you in Obama deception at length that there would be a major invasion of Africa to take over all of the natural resources not already controlled by the West. And it is neocolonialism. But remember, you don't get the stolen goods. The stolen goods are used to be shipped to China to be produced there under a monopoly deal where the West gets the rare earths, then gives it to China, and then they use that to deindustrialize the West. So a lot of good old boys go, well, you know what, let's go take it from the Africans, or let's go take the oil from the Muslims. And that's actually used to increase prices. In fact, if you go back to 1990, the real reason the UN and the U.S. was mad at Saddam, who had worked for the, quote, United States in attacking Iran, and who was actually put into power by the CIA, that's all declassified congressional hearings on record. He was actually a CIA-trained assassin in his when he was in his 20s, and then the U.S. helped install a new government. He became the head of security. Then he helped run a Western-backed coup in '79, and then he was told, go ahead and attack Iran, and given upwards of $40 billion. And Saddam then wanted to become independent, kind of like Hosni Mubarak, another puppet in Egypt, and he actually wanted to build up Iraq. You can say what you want about him, but he did. Women got to go to university. They put rock and roll music on the radio, Playboy in the stores, and I'm not even saying that's a good thing, but you know, it was freedom, certainly. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to get Playboy or have rock and roll. My point is that they westernized, and they became very wealthy, and he stopped all the ethnic fighting that was going on. And so they set Saddam up and told him, go ahead and invade Kuwait. We're not going to get involved. You're our ally. We don't get involved in inter-Arab affairs. That had been his cue 8 years before to attack Iran in the 7-year Iran-Iraq war. So he went along with that. See, here's the problem with each article. Each little point, I said I'd get to this later, turns into a whole larger story of what's happening. And what's crazy is this is all publicly admitted. It's just not generally known. Just like the general public does not know the 3 branches of government, or does not know what sodium chloride is. That's why in most surveys they say ban it. It's, of course, salt or hydrogen dioxide. Most people in surveys say ban that because it sounds scary. It's water. The people perish for lack of knowledge. The truth will set you free. Knowledge is power. All of those maxims are so true and so central. It's why I restate them. So my point is, getting back to, you don't get the goods of the spoils. Saddam's big crime in 1990 and 1991 was he was paying off his $40 billion debt. And he was doing it by flooding the market with oil. And if you'll remember, I mean, gas was something like, what was gas prices pre-war? It was something like 50 cents, just a ridiculous number. You could pull that number up. I know it was way under $1. Now, yeah, 60 cents. Double check that, though. I know your memory's right, mine's right. Yeah, it was like 60, 65 cents pre-Desert Shield. Then it jacked up to $1.50 or something. And again, the good old boys are like, get that oil. Get them Arabs oil. We're going to get it. Oh, you got it all right. Saddam was flooding the market and the free market with oil to pay off his debts. OPEC went completely ape. It was all over the Wall Street Journal. I was even reading it at the time. I was in high school. And I remember watching the news because I was into CNN and C-SPAN, and I mean, I was following it, and I remember that. I remember that gas was 55, 60, 65 cents, depending on where you lived, and then it shot way over $1.50 once the war, or even once the Desert Shield started. But my point is, now you pay, you know, close to $4 in many areas. So let me explain something. When our troops go and back up other groups to take over and destabilize African countries, and when all this happens, you're not going to get any of the goods. You pay to get the bankers, the resources, and then they all use it to leverage the market to consolidate and destroy the market because they're in an act of economic scorched earth total takeover. So we have these articles where, as we told you, they're using al-Qaeda to attack all over Africa, and then the U.S. military and NATO and the French and the rest of them go in there under the cover of AFRICOM, invading the whole place. And even the African leaders are going, these are blonde-haired, blue-eyed men with English accents. They are attacking. No, we do not want you. You are doing it. No. Oh, no, we're invading because al-Qaeda took U.S. citizens hostage. And the whole thing is a theater deal. And that happened with the invasion of Panama. Remember that? That turned out that was all staged. There were no hostages at the university. Same deal. This is purely manufactured everywhere. We'll be right back. Stay with us. You know, I could have just simplified everything I covered in the last segment and said Saddam Hussein's big crime was that he was over-pumping oil in 1990 to pay off his debts to the West. And they were telling him, OPEC and the West was saying, stop doing that. You're making oil prices too low. We want to gouge people. And he said, no, I'm going to pay my debts off. First he said, well, then forgive my debts or cut them. I want to be a sovereign country. And they said, no, you're going to be under globalist control. Again, we're conquered by these foreign international megabanks. Foreign isn't even the word. Global, outside the law mafias who brag that they've conquered us. And they'll go put people like Saddam in or Hosni Mubarak and then later set them up and bring them down to destabilize the country, to have a civil war, to destroy its economy so they can come in and buy it up for pennies on the dollar. And it's in the IMF World Bank documents that got released when Joseph Stiglitz quit the World Bank in 2002. Now 10+ years ago, hard to believe time is flying that fast. See, that's why I'm frustrated. I know how cold-blooded the globalists are. I mean, these are military, financial conquerors. These are hardcore, systematic, mechanized corporate criminals who hate the free market and want a global monopoly run by them. And then I've got to sit there and watch Joe Biden on TV going, we can't let one more child die, not one more. And then that way, when one more gets killed by a gun, see another one. See, it's your fault. Putting that guilt on us. Well, how about just never be born then? Never drive a car. Never have emotions. Well, that's their goal for the general public, is to turn us into biological androids. To turn us, under the New Freedom Initiative, into a bunch of drugged-out zombies. And that's only in the interim phase while we're being phased out as the establishment goes to robotics and automation. And that's their words. Whether that really works or not, whether this plan actually will succeed, people think, oh, man, you know, you claim this is happening. This is not my claim. This is the establishment. All they talk about, their 100+ year plan that they're following. And let me tell you, it leads to a very horrible place. See, I'm not telling you what I think is going to happen. I'm not. Fans think I'm super smart and that, man, how does he keep knowing what's going to happen? And then my detractors think I'm up here like writing science fiction on the air, telling you what I imagine is going to happen because it's so fantastical. And it's neither one. I've read hundreds of books and probably over 1,000 different white papers put out by the CFR, put out by the Club of Rome. You say, where are they? Whatistheendgame.com. Has a bibliography on that film. Great place to start. Watch my films. I make a claim. I show you the bill. I show you the document. I go to the UT library and get the Club of Rome publication, 1966. I show you where they say they're going to end the family. I show you where they say they're going to break down all of society and make us basically drugged up, brainwashed idiots before they release the controlled bioplagues and wipe almost all of us out. I show you the training videos they show kids in the UK about the Plandopolis, and people watch it who aren't children and think this is a satirical joke of a futuristic police state, the Plandopolis. It's not. It's an association with mainstream television and newspapers and the British government putting out videos for kids where mommy's the boss, robots tell you what you can do, daddy's a joke, and no one's allowed to go outside without government authorization, and you never get meat anymore, and you live in giant compact cities, and anybody else that won't lives in these giant urban-controlled slums where drones surveil everyone. And you go, well, that's the 1970s Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd is only writing about what the globalists actually plan. You see, that's what you've got to get, folks, is that it's not art that life is then imitating. It is life that art is imitating. And it's so frustrating that these globalists want to take us to this ugly place, are doing everything they can to hurt us, and then I've got to sit there and see Time magazine, the gunfighters. And on the cover of it, it shows Biden, Bloomberg, and a shooting victim, Giffords. And you know, what's interesting is she was pro-gun before she got, and she pretty much still is. I don't know how they got her to be part of this. I guess she's been obviously injured, shot in the head. But the point is that, oh, we're now going to, they're the gunfighters. They know there's that romantic idea of Americana and guns, so they turn it around. These are the gunfighters. They're trying to take your guns. Actually, they are arming themselves. The government is. They are buying 1.6 billion bullets. They are buying the armored vehicles. They are training to make war against us while collapsing the society. They are the gunfighters. They're coming with the guns. They're wearing the black hats. Not Giffords, the puppet, but the other two. Certainly, Bloomberg is the chief leader for the foreign banks in Wall Street to dominate and disarm us so we can be fully occupied. These are conquerors. Okay, we're going to get to a clip coming up in a little while of Obama saying basically abolish the Second Amendment. And the article and the text is up at Infowars.com. But if you're a radio listener, I'm looking at the cover of Time magazine, the gunfighters. Can a billionaire, a vice president, and a shooting survivor stop the violence? Now imagine, human violence has never stopped. If they really wanted to stop the violence, Obama would have said serotonin reuptake inhibitors and other psychotropics have been involved in 99% of these mass shootings. And he would go on to say, guns are good. We've seen a 49% in the last 20 years. FBI statistics from the local governments, very accurate numbers. That's why they hide them. 49% drop in crimes using guns. 21% drop in the same period on overall violent crime. We've shown you those numbers at nauseum. Go to FBI.gov and just go into it. There's thousands of pages. It'll blow you away. All compiled locally. Very accurate numbers. Murders, muggings, carjackings, you name it. I mean, imagine the level of this hoax. Imagine the level of what we're talking about. Can they stop the violence? And you notice they all keep saying, we can never have one more child shot. I mean, that's ridiculous. Never have one more child die in a car wreck, one more child drowned. I mean, the number's like 15-something times drowned every year would die from guns. We're going to ban swimming pools, going to ban showers, going to ban... People fall every day in every... I mean, it's more probably every hour. I mean, the number is in the tens of thousands every year, falling and hitting their heads in the bathtub and dying. But again, they emotionalize it, they hype it, they stand on the graves of the children. Obama uses the children like human shields to sell his agenda and says, I'll get it done for you. It is over the top. That's why I get so angry. But they're targeting well-meaning, dumbed-down Americans that like, come on, you care about the kids, right? Let's take the guns for them. Oh, I guess you're right. But Bill Clinton came out over the weekend. In fact, we have a video clip up at Infowars.com saying, don't trivialize the gun culture. These people are hard to beat, and they're getting mobilized. Because we understand it's the final straw. It's the bellwether. It's the canary in the coal mine. It shows the system is going for broke. Absolutely going for broke in a big way. On every front. And, of course, they're going after our liberties on every front. And our forebears warned us about this over and over again. And history has shown in other nations what this means. That's why it's such a big deal. And while they want to control the debate, they're not controlling the debate. And this is how wars happen, because we're committed to our cause, they're committed to theirs. That's why I want to talk to those in the middle, the police and military, and say to you, you're being trained to take our guns. That's now public. You're being trained that veterans and gun owners and George Washington are bad guys. That's public now as well. Think of how otherworldly and ridiculous that is and how absurdist, but it's really happening. Because they have to demonize us ahead of this civil war they want to start, and that's what Homeland Security... I saw an article yesterday, Aaron Dykes covered it, so did David Ortiz on the news, where they said, oh, nationwide they're going to put gunshot detectors up for Homeland Security to detect shooters. And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, it's microphones. See, oh, we're going to spy on you because of guns, but we're listening to you as well. Oh, everybody's got to go get a psychiatric evaluation, and the government will decide if you're mentally ill. And by the way, it's mentally ill to want to own a gun. You notice you hear that, and gun owners are Nazis, and gun owners are Klan members, and gun owners helped kill the kids at Sandy Hook, and gun owners are scum, and gun owners are trash, and gun owners are filth. I mean, you're seeing Bob Schaefer. We defeated Hitler, we can defeat the gun owners. CBS News. And a normal, informed person goes, man, that's discrediting. Not if we don't resist it and say, how dare you? They will normalize the idea that we are criminals inherently because we own guns. I mean, that tells you how bad these people are. That every FEMA training manual, and I've got video of it in Road to Tyranny, it's online. They go and tell police, and police have called in, you've heard them. Yeah, no, we get sent to training, especially the officers, you know, the sergeants and up, where they sit around for 3 days, they send them off to these resorts, and the feds come in, and they sit there and badmouth America and tell them how bad America is. I mean, you know, there's the enemy right there. Imagine a movie where, you know, the feds call in the cops and go, the founding fathers are bad, guns are bad, families are bad, you can't trust people that talk about wanting sovereignty, they're the enemy, we've got to train to take their guns. I mean, right there, folks, is the bad guy. Right there is the foreign operative. I mean, it's so over the top, but that's how tyrannies are. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi propaganda minister, and I've read many of his writings, said over and over again, and he admired Edward Bernays, U.S. propagandist, but admired him but wanted to kill him. It was declassified. They had plans that when they took the U.S. by having a Occupy government, like you don't just come have the French stand down. You don't just have the Americans stand down. They were going to have a deal with an American government with Senator Bush, Prescott Bush. This came out in the McCormick-Dickstein hearings. You can read the congressional record. They were going to have him and others, led by Smedley Butler as the president, the two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, two-star general who had, you know, very high approval ratings. They were going to have him as the new dictator. And he said, listen, I'm not going to do that and help stop it. But it was so incredible, it would have brought the whole system down. So they shut it down and nobody went to jail except German spies who were actually German. Again, this is history. When you know this, there's no going back. That's how the bankers have taken over, is with collaborators. But it's a corporate takeover. They've gotten very sophisticated. The British Empire in the last 100 years started losing militarily. So they said, we'll go into the U.S., we'll set up the CFR, we'll take over their government, not for the British people, the British corporate imperial model. After World War I, they said, we can't beat the Germans. They've got all the science, all the technology. They called it the German problem in their newspapers. And Lord Milner said, this was in public newspapers, he said, we need to fund radicals in Germany, help them basically have a civil war, which Germany had in the streets. We'll put radicals in, and then we'll destroy them. We'll give them weapons, encourage them to attack Europe. After they wreck Europe, we'll then take over. This is all, go look it up. It was in the cover, the front page of the Times of London. I've read it. The online scans. This was in all our newspapers at the time. Just like they put Saddam in, just like they create Al-Qaeda, just like they're trying to radicalize the militias and get us, led by feds inside militias, to start an offensive fight. They tried to start a civil war in 1993 and then again in 95, but the police wouldn't go along with it. So they couldn't fully carry it out. That's why they're trying to federalize. See, they know what they're doing. Again, I had family who were colonels and people in the Confederacy. But that doesn't mean that I was for the Confederacy. The Confederacy was a tyranny, but so was Lincoln. See, it's not that one side was good, one side was bad. The South was wronged on tariffs that ripped off the South and not the North. Tariffs on agricultural goods, not on finished goods, not on industrial goods. The taxes were wrong. There's a lot of stuff went on. But the point, and of course, Lincoln was a tyrant. But he believed he was doing good. The British came in and publicly financed the South and of course the North went along with the manipulation and started the war with the South. Again, the problem is it's all history. If you just knew history, folks, you'd understand how this works. Now, Obama is different. He's not like Lincoln, who was just trying to maintain control and went to tyranny. And of course, then Lincoln didn't want to abuse the South with Reconstruction, so they killed him because they wanted the very same interest, wanted to loot the South. The globalists want crime. The globalists want control. The globalists want chaos. And they want a civil war in this country. And Ron Paul agrees with me that it will cause a civil war when they come for the guns. It's guaranteed, and they know that. And the only way to stop them is to go, look, we know you want to start a civil war. We know you're foreign occupiers. We know what you're doing. We know you're illegitimate like the Vichy French. Again, they didn't want to tell people in our history books that the French, see, everybody says the French gave up in 2 weeks. There was only a few army groups that fought back in the French. 90+% stood down and became the new Vichy French government, run out of Vichy France. It was only the British that really fought, a small expeditionary group that then ran to Dunkirk, and you had the famous evacuation. And Hitler still had a treaty with England that he thought they were going to follow to divide up Europe with him. That's how they set him up. So Albert Speer, the vice Fuhrer, the vice president, flew over and parachuted in to meet with the Lord, who'd made the agreement with him. That's why they locked him up in the Tower of London, never letting him talk to the media until he died. Oh, you didn't know about the treaty England had with Hitler? See, folks, this is all on the record, but they won't put it on History Channel. They put some of it on there. Our government put Mao Zedong into power, now declassified. John Birch Society said that in the 50s, declassified 6 years ago on History Channel. Talking to the ancient CIA section chief about putting Mao in 49. Of course. But you can't tell Americans that, so you act like you're not friends until the 70s when Ambassador Bush is sent over to make the deal. Then they use the Chinese slaves to leverage out the West and deindustrialize us, consolidating power again. And it's understanding all of this that will help us beat these globalists. And so that's why people are like, come on, Alex, don't you want some sensible gun control? Why don't you come part way? Yeah, they always want us to give in something, and then we never give anything to them. They try to act reasonable all day. These are craven gangsters and their dupes who are coming after us. And so I get mobilized. I get angry. I get upset. It is not my wish to be up here at the tip of the spear. It is not a very safe position to be in, but there is no future if we don't beat these people. Let's go to some of these clips, and then I'm going to premiere an amazing special report put together by Aaron Dykes and crew, Founding Fathers, Battle Globalists from the Grave. We're going to premiere this special report here on air that everyone needs to see. It hasn't been uploaded to YouTube in high res yet. I'm going to have it uploaded to the Alex Jones channel as soon as we can in high res. There's a medium res version out there, but I want to promote the high res one because it's such an important report and make it the featured video as soon as it's available. But I've told you many times before this new Piers Morgan thing happened that every time I'm at the DNC covering an event, or every time I'm covering anarchists hired by the police, every time I'm at a so-called liberal event, when the camera's off, they'll come over and grab me by the arm, hoping I do something so the cops can arrest me. I mean, we've caught the police working with the anarchists countless times, and it's been on record in Denver and other places they do this. And they'll tell me, they go, when we take over, you're dead. And I'll go, so you're here with the police. You'll see the cops watching 10 feet away. And they'll go, yeah, you bet we are, you punk. I've even had them punch me in the back, and then I turn around and see the cops waiting. and then I know to control myself. And Mike Hansen even caught some of this on tape at the at the Forbes meeting, I guess back in '99 here in Austin. But the point is I've told you about this. And you've also heard the, quote, Democrats talk about how, you know, I want to kill this person, I want to kill that person, Alec Baldwin and others. I've actually been at the cocktail parties with these people occasionally when I got invited into things when I was against Bush, not because I'm a socialist, but because Bush was doing some bad things. They were so politically tribal that I would get invited in Austin and New York and L.A. to cocktail parties with famous designers and Hollywood folks. And they sit around talking about how they want to kill conservatives and how disgusting the family is. I mean, this is what goes on with these people. And so when I got there, and then the day after I was on Piers Morgan, they had Piers Morgan and two of his guests talk about how I need to be shot and killed, and how Piers Morgan will dress up in a uniform to do it. I mean, only a criminal psychology would come up with that. Yes, you'll wear a uniform. He's like, yes, I'll put on a uniform when I do it. And you know, it's the model, you know, daughter of the Ambassador Huntsman, along with the Daily Beast writer and Piers Morgan, Buzz Bissinger, talking about, oh, you'll wear a uniform when you do it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, folks, when you know criminology, it's like, whoa, whoa, fantasizing about dressing up in uniform. See, it's the state's their power. They step into the state, and then it gives them all this power. And then we found another clip that's up at Infowars.com, a Paul Watson article, Piers Morgan used machine guns to take out critics. And then we get the Weatherman videos. And this was confirmed in federal court. And many of them pled guilty to this. They're in meetings saying, we're going to take over, put 50 million in camps, kill 25 mil. And they lick their stinking lips, folks. These are psychopaths. These are fantasy killers because they're weak. These people are sheltered. Sheltered. It's been proven historically. And Victor Hugo wrote about it. Prosperity makes monsters, adversity makes men. He actually said, adversity makes men, prosperity makes monsters. I flipped his quote. And it's true. These people, that's why cultures like Rome at the end, where the emperors were so decadent and disconnected from reality, were like, kill him, kill them, you know, kill, kill, kill. Because they're just spoiled brats. And to them, it's real sexy to talk about killing somebody. And that's why elites always get so decadent and sick. So here's Piers Morgan the first time talking about how they want to kill me, and then we found a new clip how they want to kill all of us. See, they want to kill you. You have to understand, they want to kill you and then rape your wife. Not these people specifically individually, but that's where this leads. That's what tyrants end up doing. Here it is.
Yeah, but what do you need a semi-automatic weapon for? The only reason I think you need it is, Pierce, challenge Alex Jones to a boxing match, show up with a semi-automatic that you got legally, and pop him.
I'd love to see that. In uniform.
All right, that's enough. And then Pierce goes, yeah, I'll wear my brother's uniform. So again, these guys are low-level minions. They just fantasize about shooting me. But the higher level ones, not these little guys, but history shows, they want to burn cities, loot, take over. Let's go out to break with this next Piers Morgan clip. Here he is talking about killing all of us. Here it is.
Trini and Ian Hislop, all on Britain's Got Talent. They all do the respective kind of things that they're supposedly famous for. You know, Clarkson perhaps ranting about green credentials, Hislop to sarky jokes, Trini talking about what you guys are wearing. How do you mark them? How do you scale them? And what would you say to them?
What I'd do is I'd replace the buzzers with a machine gun and just take them all out and do the public a massive favour. What I'd do is I'd replace the buzzers with a machine gun and just take them all out and do the public a massive favour.
There you go. Now, again, Piers Morgan himself, I was saying not his guest, but Piers Morgan, mass death. And he's dead serious, and he's biting his lip, and he's getting excited. And that's why physically when I was around him, I got very angry at a primitive level. That's why I challenged him. I mean, I was like, you think you're tough, buddy? I want to be the champion of liberty. I'll stand against you. I know who you are. I know who you are. You rapacious would-be mass murderer. Look, here's the bottom line, folks. If you act like a nation of sheep, if you act like a nation cowering to government, even if there's good people in government, they will be replaced by people looking to dominate sheep. And that process has been going on. That's why great nations that had a lot of freedom, it takes a long time for them to get rid of the old culture of freedom, the old culture of being honorable. And again, if I could give a brain transplant or like a Vulcan mind meld with all Americans or all people in the world and just let them see what I've seen, like the new Star Trek movie that came out, if I could just say, here's what I just saw, and have you see all the quotes and all the things and them grabbing my arm and, hey, what's going on? We're going to kill you when we take over. You know that. And the first time it happens, you're like, man, who are you? I'm with them, and we're taking over soon, and it'll be our time. And it's always some weird little wimp who would never face you, except they've got the cops there from the special unit, not the general cops, but the special event unit, ready to set you up. Their power is because they're a gang of bullies lined up. And then you go to the next event, and they come over and tell you they're going to kill you. And I've even caught it on tape where the communists are in New York, and they say, we're going to kill you. It's in my film Martial Law. And I'm like, you're going to kill me? And they're like, yeah, we're going to kill all of you. When we take over, we're going to kill you. And see, it's not, folks, this is probably, I don't want to exaggerate, probably 15 times I've had them tell me in person they're going to kill me. And then now they get on the news and say they're going to kill me. I hope his kids don't get killed. Hope he doesn't get that call some night. And Piers, they cut to Piers and he goes, yes, of course. And I'm like, oh, that body language didn't look good. My wife's like, that's really creepy. That's a threat. And I'm like, I'm not sure, but it looked like it. My kids, who normally don't scare easy, are like, they're going to kill us. I'm like, no. And then 5 minutes later, yeah, we ought to kill Alex. Yeah, we'll dress up in uniforms and do it. People are like, oh, it's just a joke. And then we cut to a chilling clip of him in England going, the answer is just to kill all the gun owners. Line them up and kill them with guns. Machine gun them. I mean, look. You don't have to believe me, those of you that haven't studied history. If you knew history, you'd know how right I was, okay? You'd be having chills right now. These are abusive, hot tyrants. You have cold wars, you have hot wars. This is a flaming volcano of meanness, of viciousness. The journey is the destination for them. That's like Lenin. In many towns, they killed 50%. The NKVD documents were declassified a few decades ago. They'd say, sir, we've killed about half the population, sent the other quarter to gulags, slave labor, 1,000 miles away. There's only a small percentage of people left now, and we need them to basically supply us with food and be our servants. He'd say, nope, kill them. And they'd say, why, sir? And he wrote orders, more blood. And he'd say, and if you won't do it, I'm going to kill you. And then he would go into these things on the ground, flopping. Hitler did this too, chewing at the carpet. Just murder them, murder them. That's who they are. All right, Alex Jones here, back from an extremely re-energizing and reflective trip to the high mountain desert of Southwest Texas. Just never had a place energized me like that. Absolute food for the soul. I do intend to take phone calls, and we'll do that when Max Keiser's on with us in the third hour today. Popping in for one segment, I just had to have him on. He heads up the U.S. Small Business Association. Obama proposes to close the Small Business Administration as predicted. So they already illegally don't do everything they can to not give government contracts to small businesses and have a secret blacklist that he sued and exposed. Now they're just getting rid of it, period, because they don't want anybody getting together and communicating the giant screw job that's happening. I mean, here's an example. Not a small business, but big, heavy industrial. $22 billion was paid of your taxpayer money to ship General Motors to South America, China, and Eastern Europe. And again, it's not going to help the Chinese, the Eastern Europeans, or the Brazilians. I'm not against them getting jobs. They ship it there to actually lower the wages there and drag ours down. It's a globalist plan. It's cold-blooded. It's economic domination. And see, that's why they all push, like in World War Z, the book, how the great South African plan was that, just let the general public be killed, and how cold-blooded and beautiful it was, and how not being human is so great, and how being cold-blooded. Let me tell you, these globalists want you to be cold-blooded. They actually are hot-blooded and enjoy hurting people. And they actually care about their kids. Listen, I'm not going to lay over and die so a bunch of hunchback, buck-toothed, bug-eyed, inbred, New World Order trash can have their way. Okay, you people are cancer, and I declare info war on you. and set my full will and my name and my life and my soul on the altar of God. And God recognizes that. God gave us all power. We're just not using our power against the New World Order. And greater he that is in me than he that is in the world. And the only reason we had all this liberty and all this wealth was because we were evil. Compared to other countries, we were more God-fearing. America was the best. The West is the best. What developed here, what happened, is the greatest expression of human liberty. With all its warts and all its spot marks and all its problems. And that's why the New World Order seeks to expunge that. And they send their horsemen, their minions like this. Piers Morgan, with his minions talking about shooting me. Here it is.
Yeah, but what do you need a semi-automatic weapon for? The only reason I think you need it is, Piers, challenge Alex Jones to a boxing match, show up with a semi-automatic that you got legally, and pop him.
I'd love to see that. In uniform.
I'll borrow my brother's uniform.
I don't think guns are...
I'll borrow my brother's uniform. Now, a new clip surfaced of him in England. I guess while he was back visiting for 2 weeks before all this happened. And there he is, sniveling about how line up the gun owners and just machine gun us. With a government gun, you notice. Government gun good, citizen gun bad. Here it is.
Theoretical situation, you've got Clarkson, Trini, and in his lot, all on Britain's Got Talent. They all do the respective kind of things that they're supposedly famous for. You know, Clarkson perhaps ranting about green credentials, his lot to sarky jokes, Trini talking about what you guys are wearing. How do you mark them? How would you scale them? And what would you say?
What I'd do is I'd replace the buzzers with a machine gun and just take them all out and do the public a massive favour. What I'd do is I'd replace the buzzers with a machine gun and just take them all out and do the public a massive favour.
Always fantasizing about shooting people. And since then, I saw some other videos I forgot to give you guys where he's talking about shooting people. And by the way, I've been around these guys. They think you can't even touch a gun unless you're in a uniform. They see a gun, they go, oh God. But then they see government in a black Darth Vader outfit. That's what you should get concerned about. Not scared of the guy, the fact that he's trying to scare you. You know, when government starts dressing in black Darth Vader outfits, you're not in a free country, or you're going the direction of tyranny. We'll be back. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us. I am your host, Alex Jones. It is already the 22nd day of January, 2013, and the all-out assault on the Constitution and Bill of Rights is accelerating. There is obviously intensified attacks, not just on the Second Amendment, but moves to have the government grab public and private pension funds. We're going to be covering some of that. And also, Obama proposes to close the Small Business Administration as predicted. This is a big deal. And we're going to have the head of the Small Business Association on to talk about the shutdown, the called shutdown of the Small Business Administration. They're just getting rid of small business. This is absolute war on small business, and just as another proof of the program to deindustrialize and shut down this country. Also, an incredible video and article up at Infowars.com. Prince Harry's mental problem, murdering Afghans, is like a video game. And Prince Harry is playing with video games, talking to the media about how war is just like video games. And again, this is all done on purpose, just to get you, torture, secret arrest, government growing the opium, yeah, video game, kill people. So no one's going to care when you're getting killed. This is all being done by design. We're going to be breaking all of that down as well. Again, Piers Morgan says use machine guns to take out critics, on top of saying I should be killed and he wants to kill me. There's a new video. Nobel Prize nominee says Obama is asking military leaders if they will fire on U.S. citizens. That's up at prisonplanet.com. All this and a lot more. But first, I want to premiere here a special report put together by Aaron Dykes and the rest of our great news crew. This is the Founding Fathers defending the Republic, defending our country from the grave, premiering it here on the radio. A high-res version is going up at Infowars.com in the next 20 minutes as well for all the radio listeners to see and get out to folks. Here is this amazing special report.
The Second Amendment to the Constitution A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
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 The Founding Fathers agree. Armed citizens make good government.
I ask, sir, what is the militia? It is the whole people.
Who is the militia? Are they not ourselves?
To disarm the people, that is the best and most effective way to enslave them. George Mason.
Congress have no power to disarm the militia. Their swords and every other terrible implement of the soldier are the birthright of an American. Tench Cox, 1788.
The Constitution preserves the advantage of being armed, which Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation, where the governments are afraid to trust the people with arms. James Madison, Federalist, number 46.
A free people ought not only to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. George Washington.
The Founding Fathers created the Bill of Rights, enshrined individual protections, including the Second Amendment, because they understood that power inherently corrupts. The Bill of Rights was set up to try to discourage bad behavior from government, try to further restrain it, and try to head off what they knew would eventually become misinterpretations of the law and attempts to misconstrue the intent of the founders. But their quotes here could not be more clear.
If the representatives of the people betray their constituents, there is then no recourse left but in the exertion of that original right of self-defense, which is paramount to all positive forms of government. Alexander Hamilton, The Federalist, number 28.
Are we at last brought to such a humiliating and debasing degradation that we cannot be trusted with arms for our own defense? Patrick Henry.
The Constitution shall never be construed to authorize Congress to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. Samuel Adams.
The right of citizens to bear arms is just one more guarantee against arbitrary government, one more safeguard against the tyranny which now appears remote in America, but which historically has proved to be always possible. Hubert Humphrey, 1960.
When governments fear the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government. Thomas Jefferson.
The best we can hope for concerning the people at large is that they be properly armed. Alexander Hamilton.
The very atmosphere of firearms anywhere and everywhere restrains evil interference. They deserve a place of honor with all that is good. George Washington.
Arms discourage and keep the invader and plunderer in awe, and preserve order in the world as well as property. Horrid mischief would ensue were the law-abiding deprived of the use of them. Thomas Paine.
To preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of the people always possess arms and be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them. Richard Henry Lee, 1778.
A free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature and not as a gift of their chief magistrate. Thomas Jefferson.
Our Second Amendment, our free speech are gifts from God, but the fact that they were pointed out, highlighted, enumerated, and strengthened in the Bill of Rights and Constitution is our birthright. You don't have to like guns. You don't have to like the Second Amendment to fight for it, to stand up for it. If we let it slip away, we're going to lose everything from free speech on down. That light will be dimmed if we allow them to encroach on the Second Amendment.
Guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel. Unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force. Wherever you give up that force, you are ruined. The great object is that every man be armed. Everyone who is able might have a gun. Patrick Henry.
Dictators and disarmed populations go together.
The most foolish mistake we can possibly make would be to allow the subject races to possess arms. History shows that all conquerors who have allowed their subject races to carry arms have prepared their own downfall by doing so. Adolf Hitler, April 1942.
Before a standing army can rule, the people must be disarmed, as they are in almost every kingdom in Europe. Noah Webster.
Death solves all problems. No man, no problem. Joseph Stalin.
In earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people than to physically kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. Zygmunt Brzezinski.
If the opposition disarms, well and good. If it refuses to disarm, we shall disarm it ourselves. Joseph Stalin.
One death is a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic. Joseph Stalin.
To disarm the people is the best and most effective way to enslave them. George Mason.
And tyranny always follows disarmed populations. It's the history of democide. It's what naturally happens when power is too concentrated in one man, in one centralized government, in one tyrannical system, as we now see worldwide. We were supposed to set up checks and balances in an attempt to create better government. Instead, we let our guard down and the corporations have taken over.
It is the duty of the patriot to protect his country from its government. Thomas Paine.
The supreme power in America cannot enforce unjust laws by the sword because the whole body of the people are armed. Noah Webster, 1787.
Ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas? Joseph Stalin.
Those now possessing weapons and ammunition are at once to turn them over to the local police authority. Firearms and ammunition found in a Jew's possession will be forfeited to the government without compensation. Whoever willfully or negligently violates the provisions will be punished with imprisonment and a fine. Nazi law, regulations against Jews' possession of weapons, 1938.
Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. Chairman Mao Zedong.
The only real power comes out of a long rifle. Joseph Stalin.
Those who beat their swords into plowshares usually end up plowing for those who didn't. Ben Franklin.
If gun laws in fact worked, the sponsors of this type of legislation should have no difficulty drawing upon long lists of examples of crime rates reduced by such legislation, that they cannot do so after a century and a half of trying. That they must sweep under the rug the Southern attempts at gun control in the 1870 to 1910 period, the Northeastern attempts in the 1920 to 1939 period, the attempts at both federal and state levels in 1965 through 1976 establishes the repeated, complete, and inevitable failure of gun laws to control serious crime, or enhatch, and the right to keep and bear arms.
After a shooting spree, they always want to take guns away from the people who didn't do it. I sure as hell wouldn't want to live in a society where the only people allowed guns are the police and military. William S. Burroughs.
They've undermined our economic system. They've instituted the Federal Reserve. They bought out politicians, and now they're coming for the final restraint on their total power. That is firearms, that is guns, that is the Second Amendment. And if you let them do it, they're going to encroach on our entire lives. If you want the right to control your own life, to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you must politically stand up for the Second Amendment and say no to these attempts to use emotional strings, the images of dead children.
Okay, folks, that's only part of the report. There's like 2 or 3 minutes left. It just went up in high def at the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. It premiered last night on InfoWars Nightly News. We just premiered it here on the radio for radio audiences. But the video just went up. You can see it, 21 views. Founding Fathers Battle Gun Grabbers from the Grave. That's the best headline that I can come up with. A very powerful piece put together by our amazing crew. If you're a radio listener, the graphics, the documentation, the quotes make it 10 times more powerful. Founding Fathers, Battle Gun Grabbers from the Grave. We're going to have that video go up at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com in the next 10 minutes. Get it out to everybody. We're going to tweet it out as well to everyone and make it the featured video on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. When we come back, we're going to get into clips of Obama's inauguration as Supreme Leader, dear leader, saying it's time to turn in our guns. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get into the designed implosion of our economy. And some people say, well, give us some positive news. If people are destroying the economy by design, I'm going to explain this in the next segment, the good news is there's a way to fix it. It'd be kind of like if somebody kept stabbing your tires, you came in every day and your tires were stabbed. Should you just keep going and buying new tires? No, you should wait out there till the person comes to stab holes in the tires. Admitting that someone's doing it is positive. It means that we can fix our economy. And I'm going to explain that coming up in the next segment and tie it into Phil Mickelson warns of drastic changes because of state of federal tax situation. We've got Americans fleeing Hawaii, fleeing California, fleeing New York, fleeing other high tax zones to places like Texas. So that is coming up. Right now, let's go to a clip from Obama's coronation yesterday on the Second Amendment and more.
Through it all, we have never relinquished our skepticism of central authority, nor have we succumbed to the fiction that all society's ills can be cured through government alone. Our celebration of initiative and enterprise, our insistence on hard work and personal responsibility, these are constants in our character. But we have always understood that when times change, so must we. That fidelity to our founding principles requires new responses to new challenges. That preserving our individual freedoms ultimately requires collective action. For the American people can no more meet the demands of today's world by acting alone than American soldiers could have met the forces of fascism or communism with muskets and militias.
See, that's global government.
No single person can train all the math and science teachers we'll need to equip our children.
Hit pause. Back it up like 20 seconds. I want to hear that musket part again. They cut to the military, shots of the military, and then they say militias and muskets. The message is, you can't protect us. Really? The muskets and the militia are to protect us from you. The founders are clear. I just played clips that are on record of what they said. And they've tried to take the guns over and over again, and now they've set up a paradigm where if you don't give your guns up, you're causing more children to die when the government has made it gun-free zones, advertised it's a new thing to do, go kill kids, and put people on drugs that on record gives them a compulsion to go out and engage in mass murder while they advertise. Oh, you're being given pills that make you psychotic? Now we're going to push this. Let's go to this clip.
Meet the demands of today's world by acting alone than American soldiers could have met the forces of fascism or communism with muskets and militias. No single person can train all the math and science teachers we'll need to equip our children.
There you go. That's enough of it.
Or build the roads and networks and research labs that will bring new jobs and businesses to our shores.
It's more you didn't build it garbage.
Now, more than ever, we must do these things together as one nation.
Total communism.
And one people.
That's enough. Now, again, if he came out and said we need to collectively get behind the Bill of Rights and Constitution to empower individualism. You see, because there is a collective of liberty, but where the individual is strong and makes the whole greater. That's not their system. The collective is strong. The individual needs to be weak. It's the devil's counterfeit. And then, meanwhile, here's the key to all this. We're going to come back and break this down. They're saying, we know things are tough. Come together and we'll get out of this. And that's what they have the clergy response team manuals say. And we've seen clergy on TV talk about it, where they're told, during the crisis, take the shot, go to the FEMA camp, do what you're told, we'll get out of this. Do what you're told, we'll get you out of this collapsed mine. Do what you're told, the economy will come back. Turn your guns in, things will get better. Give us a third bailout, Greece, and we'll turn the lights back on. Things only got worse. It's false hope. It is a program where they implode things, offer the solution that's more government. Things implode more. Offer the solution, more government. Things implode more. Offer the solution, more government. Things implode more. Offer the solution, more government. And then they are exempt from the laws and regulations and taxes, so what happens? They set up a system where you can't operate, and only they can. It's called monopoly tyranny. Very cold-blooded. And they all write white papers and talk about it in Agenda 21 and how they're going to shut everything off while going, things are getting bad. Just come together behind me, I'll fix them. You see how cold-blooded that is? While they do everything they can to make it impossible to live or have a farm or a factory or to work in this country outside of the mega corporations that are exempt. All right, we are back live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to get into just a few data points of how the federal government, which is the occupational Vichy French government, just like under the Nazis, I'm not just saying that, that's who they are, is trying to dismantle what's left of our country. It's been a soft corporate takeover. by anti-free market forces. They know we're waking up, so now they want our guns. They want free speech zones. They admit the NSA is spying on us. They want forced psychiatric reviews of everybody. This is what's being proposed, all right out of a mix of Soviet, Russia, Nazi Germany. I mean, if you know history, it's incredible. Couple issues. Don't forget, this broadcast is listener-supported. Be sure and support the radio sponsors you both hear locally and the national ads. Be sure and support our local stations. I'm going to talk about them in a moment. And also go to InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsShop.com. Takes you to the same place for our secure online shopping cart area that has the best water filters at the lowest prices, like ProPure, 10% off, promo code WATER. It's got the Pro-Second Amendment T-shirts, the InfoWars ball caps. Great to meet like-minded people wearing these around. It's got all 20-plus films I've made, dozens and dozens of other films and books that I've read that I think are the best out there. The new documentary presentation, Strategic Relocation, breaking down different areas of the country that are safer for economic reasons, military reasons, you name it. That new film is out, along with the book, Discounted. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items that I endorse, that I believe in. Modifilin, the best supplement out there from all the research my top researchers have done, doctors and others. The best seaweed from an uncontaminated area in the Pacific off of New Zealand. A lot of stuff like that at InfoWarsStore.com. You can also call 888-253-3139 for any orders or any questions 24 hours a day. Until 5 o'clock, it is our crew answering the phones, the three great ladies over there. And then after that, it goes to Hastings Communications that I've been using for about 15 years, 16 years, a group of telephone operators here in Austin, Texas. We could get it about a third of the price in India, but our phones are here in Austin, Texas as well. Nothing against India. It's just the point is we're pointing out that we're trying to have as much stuff happen here in America as we can. 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139 to call. And this T-shirt sold out again, but another truckload is coming. It is an AK-47 with the Come and Take It Texas flag, and it says inside the AK-47, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And on the back, it has a Infowars.com. And best-selling shirt ever, even better than the Obama Joker shirt that we had as a limited edition. And by the way, we're going to come back with that soon. Not the old design, because that was a limited edition. Haven't sold that in about 2 years. A new Obama shirt is coming out, but it's got a twist to it. So wait till that happens. So all of this and more available at InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139 or write to us at P.O. Box 19549, Austin, Texas 78760. Okay, let's go ahead now and plug a couple of our great stations, and some of the stations in focus. WRXK, 96.1 FM, Cape Coral, Florida. 100,000-watt monster of a station has been airing the Alex Jones Show for almost a year now. This is Stations in Focus. Check out their website at 96rock.com and become sponsors and support them. Bare minimum, spread the word. 96 K-Rock, 96K-Rock, so that's the letter K there, so 96krock.com. Also, want to have special thanks to KLRG 880 AM, Little Rock, Arkansas, a 50,000-watt mega station covering like 4 states. I've been up there and heard it. Sister station of WTAN also airs Alex Jones. Their website can be found at klrg.tantalknetwork.com. And again, we'll put that up on screen for everybody as well who's watching on TV. So 880 AM. Be sure and support both of those, or all 3 of those fine stations. And a new affiliate already rolled in this week, WSTP 1490 AM, has added our Sunday show live from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern with a start date of the 27th, WSTP 1490 AM. And we've got more we'll also announce tomorrow. So well over 140 AM and FM affiliates as of right now. Okay, again, it's hard for me to get into a subject like this because I want to hit you with 1,000 data points. But our guest is holding, waiting to cover the latest incredible outrage that the system is pushing. But Obama is looking to get rid of the U.S. Small Business Administration and consolidate it basically in under Homeland Security. Just the overall Gestapo. And he's selling it like, hey, you want to get rid of federal agencies? I will get rid of it. Now, here's the issue. You're supposed to have, and our guest will give you all the numbers, the majority of money, taxpayer money, when it is federal dollars, is supposed to go back to small and local businesses, so that at least the argument is if 30-40% of our money is going to the feds, it'll come back. But that there's got to be a bid competition to ensure that we don't get ripped off, and then that way, if we're going to have a big government system, at least our own tax money comes flowing back to then build up the economy. Now, the problem with that always is big government is going to end up having special interests, mainly globalists, come in and pay them off. And it's come out in the last few years. He's filed dozens of lawsuits, dozens and dozens on the subject. We'll get the actual numbers. I know it's a lot from him, from our guest, to not let small businesses get any of the money. In fact, most of them, it turns out, are foreigners. And when the public wakes up to this, they go, hey, you're right. There shouldn't be no-bid contracts for French companies. No. This is even American companies that aren't even allowed to bid. In the case of what we saw in Iraq, is that they spun it as, oh, yeah, it's no-bid contracts for national security. But it turned out it was foreign companies. The point is, there's just so many angles to all of this, it makes my head spin. And you've seen some of the most famous actors and soccer players in France leaving because they have a 75% income tax, and then on top of that, any money that you get to keep over €1 million, another 75% tax. In fact, some people pay over 80%, but 75 is what most of the high-income earners pay. So what's 75 and then 75 on top of that? You have 25% left, and you take 75 from that, not counting all the local taxes. I mean, you're talking about not even 10% of your money you keep. And by the way, Obama has hired the big French top economists to help run international and domestic systems. Now, that was in the news 2 weeks ago, and they're calling her this genius. Oh, it's so genius to have everybody basically working for the government, and then that gives them total control over society. Well, here's a new article out of Yahoo Sports. Phil Mickelson warns of drastic changes because of state-federal tax situation. If you add up all the federal and you look at the disability and the unemployment and the Social Security and the state, my tax rate is 63%, he said. So I've got to make some decisions on what I'm going to do. There are going to be some drastic changes for me because I happen to be in the zone that has been targeted both federally and by the state, and you know it doesn't work for me now, he added, so I'm going to have to make some changes, and is saying he may leave and take his business out of California, the great exodus. So the globalists say that they need a global government so that you can't escape them. But then they, at the global level, they're exempt, just like EU bureaucrats are totally exempt from federal EU taxes. But they have the head of the EU bureaucrats, the head of the IMF, what's it, Lagarde, I always mispronounce it. She comes out, remember, and says, the Greeks aren't paying enough taxes on average, over 60%. And then Howard Dean comes out and says, poor people need to pay more. Well, guess what they are now? Payroll taxes kicked in. How you like that 3.8% on top of the 10% you were paying? That's almost 14% right there. Okay, that's enough. I'm going to go to our guest here, and he joins us. And, guys, I had the article. Here it is. Press release. Obama proposes to close the Small Business Administration as predicted October 31st, 2012. That's when that first came out. Well, now he's back with it, that he's been sworn in. So they've been predicting it since then, and now they're moving ahead with it. And Lloyd Chapman, a frequent guest, sorry we don't have more time for him here today, and I appreciate him joining us, ASBL.com. He joins us. He's a private group who's been successfully lobbying for millions of small businesses, and he's the biggest small business organization outside of the Better Business Bureau and a few others in the Chamber of Commerce. And he's been exposing how they do everything they can to make sure small businesses cannot get $1. And it's illegal what's happening. So now Obama wants no oversight and no group period to even dispense it. Okay, so Lloyd Chapman, born and raised in Texas. He began his career working, of course, for Bob Bullock, famous Democrat. Spent 8 years at the Texas Comptroller's office before moving to California to enter the computer industry. And I'm not going to go through how he launched successful technology firms and things like that, and how he was involved in congressional intervention and investigations of F-22 stealth fighters and things like that. He's gotten a lot done. How many lawsuits have you filed total?
Oh, probably about 40.
40. So I said dozens and dozens. That was accurate. Okay, I burned most of the time here. We got 2 segments left. Run through what we're facing and what this means.
All right. Well, I like to talk about the facts. I'm trying to be persuasive. So according to the U.S. Census Bureau, small businesses in America are responsible for over 90% of the net new jobs, half the gross domestic product, half the private sector workforce, and over 90% of all U.S. exporters. So if you want to create jobs, you've got to do it through small businesses. The Kauffman Foundation did a study a couple of years ago that said small businesses have created 100% of the net new jobs since 1980. That means Fortune 1000 firms haven't created one net new job in over 30 years. So small businesses are the heart and soul of our nation's economy. There's one agency in Washington to help the small businesses. That's the Small Business Administration. It's actually a fairly small agency. There's 28 million small businesses. And Barack Obama is going to try to close it, which would be economic suicide. And I'm trying to stop him. And I don't know why he wants to close it. I guess the only reason he wants to close it is to cover up the fraud and abuse that's gone on during his administration. I don't know if you saw the story, but the New York Times did a story a couple of months ago that the Obama administration gave over $900 million in U.S. government small business contracts to a Russian-owned international arms dealer called Roseborn Exports. That's the type of thing that Barack Obama is doing. And there's been a number of federal investigations.
Yes, we did see that. That was huge news, and that's only the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. The Inspector General for the Small Business Administration that he appointed has stated every year of his administration, the #1 challenge at the Small Business Administration is the diversion of federal small business contracts to large corporations, and they've named it one of the largest challenges facing the entire country. So I think Obama's going to try to close the SBA by combining it with probably the Commerce Department, and it's just an attempt on his part to cover up the rampant fraud and abuse, and it's going to be devastating to our economy if he's successful. And I hope people will join us in fighting the Obama administration to save the only agency to help the middle class.
And as usual, Mr. Chapman, there's all this spin that is involved at so many levels to this, where Obama's selling it like, I'm going to get rid of waste, I'm going to get rid of a bad agency, and I'm going to cut government. But really, this is the agency that makes sure federal funds actually go to real U.S. companies, and i.e. small ones.
Absolutely. Federal law says a minimum of 23% of the total value of all federal contracts should go to small businesses. I don't think there's a better way to invest our tax dollars than to reinvest back into the companies that create all the jobs, companies where most Americans work, and he wants to get rid of that. He says he's going to save $300 million a year. In the federal budget, that's peanuts. The Pentagon misplaces hundreds of billions. To put it into perspective, he says he's going to close the SBA to save $300 million a year, and he's going to increase foreign aid by $9 billion a year. That would be enough to do 2 things: put an armed guard in every school in America, or run the SBA for a decade. So his story about closing the SBA to save $300 million a year is just ridiculous. It's not believable.
And again, Lloyd Chapman joins us. He is the head of the ASBL, American Small Business League. Really the only group out there, kind of like Gunners of America, that's medium-sized and really fighting hard. You know, you're a nice guy, and you're not a psychopath, you're not a sociopath, you're not a control freak, so you go, I don't know why he's doing this. Well, you know, I mean, you've helped break it in the national news a few years ago, where they create secret blacklists for small businesses, where they're taking the majority of the money and giving it not just to mega corporations, but foreign corporations. He paid $22 billion of the bailout money to General Motors to ship it to China. Volt, Cadillac, and other factories, some others went to Brazil, others to Eastern Europe. They're doing everything they can. We went from $25 million on food stamps to $49 million his first 4 years. They want us dependent. They're globalists. It's Agenda 21. California knows when they raise taxes, it's going to kill the state. I mean, they know what they're doing. They want us bankrupt. It's cold-blooded. They want to destroy this country. They want to break us to bring us into collectivism. They're doing this, period. In fact, what's the percentage? I saw in the Wall Street Journal in a report talking about you like a year ago. How much of the small business contracts actually goes to multinationals?
Oh, probably maybe half.
And then total goes to big companies that's supposed to be going to small ones.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if you're going to have trillions of dollars to the federal government, it better come back into America. At least that creates some jobs. It gives them still control. But, I mean, they're killing their own golden goose here.
Absolutely. The Small Business Act is the most efficient, effective economic stimulus program in the history of America. If Barack Obama would simply quit giving federal small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms that not only are not creating jobs, but shipping jobs overseas, it would create more jobs, do more to boost the economy than anything he or President Bush ever spoke of. It's so simple. He could do one executive order, would take him 5 minutes, and just says a federal government would no longer report awards to publicly traded companies or foreign-owned companies as small business awards. It would put as much as $200 billion a year in existing federal infrastructure spending back into the middle class, but he's not going to do that. And he's going to destroy our economy. There's no logic behind taking federal funds about law should be going to the middle class where most people work and all the jobs are created and giving it to foreign-owned companies. There's no way to justify it.
It's totally illegal. And again, I kind of bumbled it earlier. We're going to break, going to come back and continue along this. But the point is the no-bid contracts came out in Iraq, hundreds of billions of dollars. Something was over $1 trillion total, $1.7 trillion, I think, the whole thing, and it's still going. But they're sitting there saying, oh, be quiet. We've got to have no bids for national security for American companies. It was foreign companies getting it in no bid. I mean, it's even worse, but to the general public, oh, we got to do it for national security. For American companies, it's foreign companies. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the foreign companies come in and lobby to take your tax money out of the country. This is how we've been occupied and conquered. This is economic espionage. All right, we got our guest a little bit into the next hour. Then Max Keiser is joining us on the economic front and a lot more. This video, this is breaking news. I haven't seen anybody point it out. TSA groped attendees at Obama inauguration, and they searched them. They groped their genitals. They did the full frisk because you're a criminal. Government is God. You are bad. And then you see people like Saddam Hussein and others. They can stand around with everybody, thousands of people firing machine guns in the air, and no one shoots them. But our supposed free leaders, and again, the globalists selected who could run. They put the billions of dollars in to put who they wanted in. Both guys basically wanted the same thing. One just paid lip service to, you did build that. The other didn't. Romney was a placeholder. And now we're seeing the fruits of it. So I'm going to do a report this week that why Obama really is a dictator. That is, his office has become a manufactured synthetic presidency. And the only word for that is dictatorship. And he's acting dictatorially with all these edicts. Normally I say get rid of the Department of Education, get rid of all these groups, because we shouldn't have them running our local schools. We should have taxes cut, keep the taxes in the state. But I've got to say, because the law plugs in to the Small Business Administration, it's designed to make sure the money does go to the lowest bid contractor who has a good track record in the 50 states, not to foreign globalists. So what will Obama's trying to shut this administration down do?
Well,
go ahead.
When you're talking about Obama, there's been a number of federal investigations during his administration. And I'm just reading these reports. And all the reports say that his administration is diverting these federal funds that by law should be going to the middle class to some of the biggest companies in the world. Lockheed, Boeing, Northrop, Raytheon, Finmechanic in Italy, Roseborn in Russia, companies in South Korea. So it's just a tragedy. If you really want to know who Barack Obama is, he's a man that in the middle of the worst economic downturn in 80 years, when the statistics show irrefutably that small businesses create between 90 and 100% of the jobs, he's doing everything he can to take that money and divert it to the large businesses that most likely have created one job in 30 years.
And the law says he can't do that. And remember, the law, he's breaking the law to do that, and the corporate whore media is barely starting to cover it. I want to warn everybody that works for the system. You're not going to have a country anymore if you don't stop things like this. And the reason we have you on 5 or 6 times a year, Mr. Chapman, is because what you're saying is a real solution. Have the money go back to America. It is a no-brainer.
There's no logic. I would love to have anybody in the country, Obama's biggest supporter, explain to me, you know, how it's good for America to take our tax dollars that by law should be going to American companies and giving it to a Russian-owned international arms dealer or some of the biggest companies in Europe and Asia. There's no way to explain that. By the way, are you familiar with Obama's Jobs Council? I saw a story about that the other day.
Yeah, tell folks about that.
Oh, well, Obama's got a Jobs Council of all Fortune 500 firms. Now, according to, again, the U.S. Census Bureau and the Kauffman Foundation, it doesn't look like Fortune 500 firms have created one job in 30 years. And that's who's Obama's Jobs Council. The president was the head of GE. GE is shipping more American jobs overseas than any other company. So it's insane. It's
and to be clear,
insane.
In the aggregate, and then those are cooked numbers, it's actually worse. We're losing jobs. But in the aggregate, not one new job from Fortune 500. Almost, what is it, 90-something% are made by the small businesses. And then meanwhile, but see, that's what he does. Oh, we don't have 50 states anymore. We have a governor's council I appoint. Oh, we don't have local counties anymore. We have a rural council I created. That's what he does. He creates a counterfeit that then is represented by the globalists. We'll be back. Stay with us. All right. Max Keiser's coming up to the balance of the hour after the break. Lloyd Chapman is our guest right now with the ASBL.com, American Small Business League. The globalists are getting rid of all the agencies, not the bureaucrats, but the command structure and the mandate, because these agencies are mandated by law. If Obama creates a new agency, it's still illegal. But somehow he can put new people in who'll just do whatever he says. Because bureaucrats have got problems, but a lot of them are like, yeah, in fact, in all their studies, they're like, yeah, this is supposed to go to local businesses, U.S. businesses, small businesses. It's not happening. And so they don't even like their own agency, so just get rid of it. Because, you know, as bad as some bureaucrats are, they're basically committing suicide politically and economically. There's some other breaking news up at Infowars.com that is so incredible. Video, photographer attacked by Metro security for taking pictures and filming. Yeah, more and more police and security people are beating people up even on the street corners or arresting them for filming. I mean, government does not want you filming. And this is crazy. We'll have to show some of that and talk about it as well. That's up at Infowars.com. Let's go back to Lloyd Chapman. Lloyd, we're almost out of time. I know you wanted to comment on the Piers Morgan thing. Give us a quick comment on that and then what we can do to help defeat Obama getting rid of this agency and ignoring the law.
I loved you on Piers Morgan, by the way. I've watched it several times. I loved it.
No, I know you told us that in the email. You wanted to make a comment, so go ahead. What's your take on it?
Well, here's what Piers Morgan doesn't understand. FBI says about 20 children a year are killed in schools. 1,500 a year are killed by their parents. More children are killed by lightning. If you've got a child in school, they're more likely to die from a lightning strike than they are in school. 1,000 kids a year commit suicide. More kids are killed by bee stings than guns in schools. And about the same number of children are killed by dogs every year as they are guns in schools. Guns in schools are not a problem. Children being killed by guns in school is not in the top 10 reasons children die. 3,000 children a year die from head injuries riding their bicycles. So when you talk about these average over the last decade of 21 children a year being killed in schools, it's statistically insignificant. It's not even in the top 10 reasons. On the Piers Morgan show, you mentioned 11,000 people in America are killed by gun violence. 10 times as many people in America die from the known side effects of properly prescribed and properly taken pharmaceutical drugs. 10 times as many people.
No, it's a total fear-mongering hoax manipulating our hearts.
Absolutely. It's a tragedy that those 20 children got killed, But again, they're 75 times more likely to be killed by their parents. They're twice as likely to get struck by lightning. So it's actually statistically insignificant. And if anybody like Piers Morgan wants to worry about saving children, he needs to, launch a program to protect them from these prescription drugs.
But Lloyd, here's the problem. They all know this stuff. They want to disarm us. Why do they want to disarm us, in your view?
Well, I think that, when you look at the Homeland Security buying, 1.8 billion rounds of hollow point bullets and urban assault vehicles and surveillance drones, they got something in mind that we don't know about. And they want to disarm us. And, of course, as you've talked about a million times, disarming the people is the first thing that dictators have always done throughout history. And it's the opposite what the Founding Fathers wanted. The Founding Fathers wanted us to have the firepower to overthrow the government if the government became oppressive. Piers Morgan talks about, why do you need an assault rifle? Why do you need a 30-shot clip? Well, when the government stormtroopers start kicking in your front door with automatic weapons with 30-shot clips, you're going to want an assault rifle, 30-shot clip to try to defend you and your family. So people need to understand assault rifles and 30-shot clips are not for hunting. They're not to protect your home. They're to make sure that the American people have the ability to protect
Well
themselves.
said. Lloyd Chapman, we'll talk to you again soon. God bless you. Great job. Max Keiser is a retired, very successful stockbroker. He also helped invent what is used on many stock exchanges today. He invented the virtual trading Hollywood Stock Exchange system. And he's done shows with BBC, RT, Press TV, you name it, radio host, TV host. I was on his show that actually aired over the weekend. And that video is posted up at Infowars.com. At least I gave it to the guys to post this morning. I didn't see it in the top story, so I'm going to have it reposted up there. An important interview we did on several subjects. But Max joins us here today, and we're going to be talking to him in just a moment. I wanted to plug, if you go to Infowars.com, Founding Fathers Battle Gun Grabbers from the Grave, special report. Just an incredible video put together by Aaron Dykes and crew that needs to go out to everybody. This is powerful and is cyanide to the globalist lies. It is absolutely essential video. Founding Fathers Battle Gun Grabbers from the Grave, top featured video at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. You heard us air part of it last hour. Okay, going to Max Keiser of MaxKeiser.com. He joins us from London. Max, so much is happening, and I wanted to get you on about the economy because they're buying urban assault vehicles, 1.6 billion bullets, training the Army for martial law. That's all declassified, gearing up like it's the end of the world. And you believe that by the end of April, we're going to see the next phase in implosion. We're already in an implosion. They just use more debt and welfare checks and the government little credit cards to keep things going. It's a consolidation program. But now we've seen a bunch of countries, the biggest of which, Germany, the key to the EU, repatriating their gold, saying in the news, I saw it in the Financial Times, we don't trust the U.S. anymore. So even the crooks in running Germany don't trust the crooks over here. So are we seeing that creeping towards the exits that you've warned about? Then we'll get into your take on the Second Amendment, what's coming up in the economy, this African invasion, where even mainstream news is saying terror in North Africa, are Westerners pulling the strings of al-Qaeda? I mean, even mainstream news now goes, is NATO and the U.S. staging stuff to be able to invade? Duh. Look at Libya, look at Syria. Again, joining us, Max Keiser. Max, so much is happening. I hope that your bold prediction is not true, but unfortunately, it looks like we're creeping towards the eve of financial collapse. We'll talk about what that collapse will look like as well. Max Keiser.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, well, nice to be on again, and thanks for coming on my show. And I think you describe it well, creeping toward the exits. And this is what the German gold repatriation story is all about. And as you point out, the central banks have lost trust in each other, and they are taking their gold out of banks in respective vaults around the world, and they're bringing it all home. And they're doing this in a way that will precipitate and accelerate this collapse that we've been talking about. And to give you an idea for how this all works, in Britain, for example, the government says they have 300 tons of gold here in Britain. But my sources tell me that they have leased out or sold over 1,000 tons. So we have a fractional gold standard around the world that is keeping these central banks afloat. And now that they all want their gold back, they find out that the gold's not there. Back when Germany took 900 tons from Britain back during the 2000-2001 period, Gordon Brown, to satisfy Germany's demand for gold to be sent back to Germany at that time, he ended up having to sell 400 tons of Britain's gold. So Britain had to sell 400 tons, and that's about well over $1 trillion now that he gave away, because the price of gold at that time was $250 an ounce. Now it's $1,700 an ounce. And this is a problem going forward. The Netherlands want their gold, Germany wants their gold, China is buying gold. But these central banks that say that they have gold, it's turned out that they actually leased the gold, which is a way for them to put on their books that they still own the gold. When the Fort Knox, for example, when they lease the gold, they claim that that is as good as owning the gold itself. But if you were to audit Fort Knox, you would find that most of the gold has been leased, and that means sold. So when people come then to claim their gold, they find that it's not there. The Bank of New York, when Germany says that they want the gold over 7 years. Well, as the panic in the gold market builds, they're going to want that gold a lot sooner, and they're going to be told that we don't have the gold to give you because we sold it.
All right, I want to stop you right there, because something I want to do when we're able to budget in hiring a researcher or an archiver is, when I have guests on like you, I'm going to have them sit there and put the key points you say basically into a scroll at the bottom like mainstream television, but also put it on a computer so we can search a database of when you've been on the radio/TV show. Because, Max, ad nauseum for about 2 years in almost every interview, so there's probably 20 of these, you have said that you'll know that it's about to collapse when they start demanding gold from Britain and from the U.S., and that they've leveraged it at least 10-to-1 in fractional reserve, and that it's the fraud of the silver and gold reserves that will finally bring them down, and that they want to have a controlled collapse without this happening, but that if they do go for the gold and silver this way, that's a signal that things are out of control. Now you've said that over and over and over again, and my guests do this all the time, because we have guests on that are right. They could have guests on that were right on national TV here, in mainstream news, but they don't want you to be right. They don't want the slaves to know what they know. But, Max, you're scaring me, because you've said this over and over again, that this would be the sign. And now it's not just Germany demanding the gold from the U.S. and England and places. This is really scary. So you've got the floor till we go to break in 5 minutes. Break down how you knew this was coming and what this signifies and how you think they'll satisfy it this time.
It started really back in 2008, on March 17th of 2008. Stacey Herbert and I, we were making a documentary. We were in Frankfurt, Germany. We were at the Bundesbank, and we were talking to people at the Bundesbank. And this was right when Bear Stearns was collapsing, and gold shot up above $1,000 an ounce. And we ended up there at a very historic moment. And I asked, I'd like to see the gold. And the response from the Bundesbank was, well, most of it is in New York. Now, that film was later broadcast on Al Jazeera English, and it was a shock to the people in Germany. And another journalist named Lars Scholl picked up the ball, and he's been hammering journalists and bankers now every year for 4 years, until the point where Bundesbank came out and said, due to the popular pressure, we have to admit that we have these huge gold positions held in the New York Fed, and we're going to now repatriate this gold. We're taking the gold back. And then my sources tell me that the New York Fed said, well, we don't want you to start a run on the gold market, so we're going to space this out over 7 years. But this was really going back to what we discovered in 2008, which is that the gold that these banks say that they have, they don't have. And this set off a fire, a trigger. Now, over the past 4 or 5 years, what you have is central banks and governments to keep the economies afloat have been aggressively buying their own bonds. They call it quantitative easing. And, you know, your other guests talk about this, like Gerald Celente talks about this a lot. They buy their own bonds as a way to keep interest rates low or to keep bond prices high. Now, here's an amazing statistic. The bond price in America has not been as high as it is today in the 240 years that America has existed. The bond price, the government bond price in the UK and Britain has not been this high since 1694, when the Bank of England was created. The bonds are where the dot-com was in 2000. It's where the stock market was in 1987. It's where the real estate market was in 2005. It's at a historic peak, at a bubble peak. Now, whether the bonds collapse between now and April, as I predicted on your show last year, it could happen. I think it could happen. I might be wrong, but I won't be wrong by much. I could be wrong by a few weeks, a few months. But that's what we're going to see. We're going to see bonds collapse. We're going to see gold now, panic buying in the gold market, taking gold a lot higher. And, of course, this all ties in to what we launched on your show 2 years ago, Crash JP Morgan Buy Silver. The price of silver was around 26. At that time, there was such a furor to buy silver. It moved up to 50, pulled back now to the low 30s. But now we're seeing the price of silver after this consolidation period. Now it looks like it's going, along with gold, you're going to see new highs in silver. So silver will get over $50, $60, $70 an ounce. But those are individuals now who don't trust the banking system, not just governments. And for individuals, they reach for silver because it's a lot easier to get. It's cheaper.
And Max, the public here going to break, they're all buying survival goods, shelters, guns. They're voting with their purchases showing they don't trust the system. The elites are all buying armored redoubts and getting bodyguards. They don't trust the system. This looks like quite a mess we're going to enter.
Well, there's a good point you're making there, because it's to contrast today with the 1930s. People say this is similar to 1930s. There's a big difference between now and 1930s. In the 1930s, there was a liquidity problem. Banks needed cash to keep their business going for their deposits. But today, that's not the problem. The problem is an insolvency issue. These big too big to fail banks, they are technically insolvent. They're zombie banks. They're being kept alive with this money printing that the politicians tell us, well, we need to print the money. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the 1930s. That's false. It's not like the 1930s. It's not a liquidity issue. It's an insolvency issue. And they're keeping the banks alive with this cheap money and 0% interest rates to keep their buddies afloat.
All right, stay there. Stay there. By the way, KVUE is reporting CNN refuses to show live coverage. Very suspicious. Mass shooting at Lone Star College in Houston. We'll be back. Obviously, we have it recorded, and we'll have it on the nightly news tonight. I'll file a special report for Infowars.com for all the radio listeners. As this develops, at least 3 people shot at Lone Star College in Houston, and I walked out there during the break, and CNN's going, we're not going to show live feeds. We'll show selective clips. So now, we're not going to show live feeds. But who is KHOU. So we need to go to their website, KHOU, and KVUE has it. So we've now reached a point where CNN will not show you what's happening. Oh, because we might see other shooters in camo getting arrested, and then we're told, oh, no, the 5-year-old saw that. We never put that on the news. Oh, go back to sleep. This isn't Operation Gladio. We're not staging something. I tell you, Max Keiser, people can debate, whether a gun culture is a good thing or a bad thing. The nanny-state folks don't like guns. We know they're here to protect us from tyranny. But why is the government arming to the teeth while rushing to disarm us? Is it because they don't want us to be armed during the collapse?
I think that's a pretty fair statement. When the bond market collapses, as we've talked about, because it's a bubble, it's in a 300-year high bubble. And I look at what's happening in the markets to give me a clue what the big money is doing. And I know that JP Morgan, over the past couple of years, has been developing huge positions, monopoly-like positions in food, copper, industrial metals, and in precious metals. And they're doing so because they know what's coming, that hyperinflation is coming, and they want to be able to totally control that market. For example, JP Morgan just got involved in launching an exchange-traded fund for copper. So that means, and before they did so, they bought something like 20% of the world's copper supply. So now the price of copper is going to start going up aggressively higher because it's being manipulated higher, because J.P. Morgan and the bankers on Wall Street want to have a new way to make money. It's going to be on commodities. They've made all the money they possibly can over 30 years in the bond market, because the bond market, the interest rate under Paul Volcker got 15 to 16% on the 10-year bond. It hit this huge high on the interest rate. And during the past 30 years, it's now gone down to zero. During that 30-year period, it was the biggest bull market on Wall Street in history, selling bonds and bond-related equities and stocks and options, et cetera. Now that 30-year period is over, and we're going to enter into a period of commodity price appreciation. J.P. Morgan already knows it. Goldman Sachs already knows it. And they're buying huge positions into these markets. And as far as what's in the U.S., if the price of food gets to a certain level, it causes riots. We know historically that when the price of food gets to around 40% of an individual's income, you look for a riot. That's the point it got to in Egypt before the Egyptians staged a riot, a revolution in their country.
And they don't want us armed so that we can't protect ourselves, but that might actually cause total rioting where even the government gets taken down. But the tyrant's instinct is to disarm us so much they still don't care. But historically, if they take the general public's guns, that will make the government even more unstable.
Right. So in the U.S., the average American spends something in the order of 12 to 15% of their income on food. And it's still, it's not at 40%. But as prices now begin to go up because of the manipulation coming and the collapse of the bond market and the loss of purchasing power from the dollar, you're going to get to the point where the food costs are going to be out of reach for a very, very large percentage of the population.
And so stay there. We got to go to break,
yeah.
but I've got to play just a minute or so. This is KHOU, and out there on Dish Network and the other cable we've got, CNN says they won't show it live. We're watching it live. They don't want you hearing the original eyewitness accounts. This is very suspicious. Turn it up.
Students or not, right?
Yeah, correct. So basically,
this is live at 1:28.
And as soon as I heard the bullets flying or whatever, the gun being, fired off.
CNN will not let you see this.
Running, and that was hint for
very suspicious.
So you ran?
Right, yeah, I ran because basically when you hear sounds that's, out of the ordinary, you're going to run. So, that's just...
Again, why don't they want people to hear what happened live?
Get out the way, because I don't want to be a, victim or anything.
That's Brittany Mobley. She's a student here at Lone Star College on the North Side campus. You can see there is still plenty of law enforcement activity here on this scene. They are allowing students to leave. We're not sure how much communication is going on to students other than they're being told that they can leave, but probably not come back today.
Are they still supposed to get in a fetal position?
As I can tell you,
so there can be a higher death toll?
Turkey Road. It's one of the entrances off of Aldine Westfield. There's another checkpoint all the way down back here on the other side.
Come on, tell us how many dead.
There's another checkpoint where we're told that some vehicles, potentially even all vehicles from students here on this scene are being searched as they leave. One officer did tell me that.
I hope this isn't a big mass shooting.
Who are plenly well
We're going to come right back with Max Keiser. Stay with us.
Stay with us. At this point, you can see this student here.
Mass shooting in Texas. Oh, Blitz, not too big. Oh, my gosh. Oh, boy. You know why they want only a few globalist-controlled national news networks? Because they want to be able to control the narrative and tell you what they want. We are showing KHOU 11 on screen right now for TV viewers at Infowars.com. And, of course, we're doing it via fair use of a news event here in our state to document what's happening. CNN, during the break, we've got it recorded. We're going to have a report out on this, said, quote, I just saw it again. We are not letting you see live feeds because of what you might see. And it is bodies laying on the ground with paramedics around them. It looks like from helicopter with a shot where you can't even make out if they're male or female. I mean, you got shoot-'em-up video games, mass murder on TV. In the 60s, they'd show kids naked running down rice paddy roads with their skin hanging off because it was documentary. That's why in old radio, they would allow cussing only if it was a real event that happened. Not because people wanted to hear cussing, but because you want to hear what really happened. for documentary purposes. That's why when I was a kid, I'd watch PBS and they'd have some, thing about a historical event that happened in the 50s and there'd be cussing on it. Because it's real. So, of course, we should see whatever this is in 2013. See, they tell you can see all the simulated torture and murder and death you want in movies, you name it. Just like Time Warner's putting out all these violent movies, but now saying nobody can advertise guns on any Time Warner magazine, TV show, cable network, you name it. Max Keiser is our guest. He always seems to come on when there's a big news event. This has happened like 3 times, the last 3 times he was on. Max Keiser, syndicated TV host, radio host, you name it, maxkeiser.com. Max, what do you make of this new phenomenon? Because I've never seen them do this where they say, oh, it's too hurtful. Like a little girl has a Hello Kitty bubble machine. I actually bought these for my kids. You pull the trigger and you stick it. It's not even meant to be a, quote, gun. It's a thing to hold and put bubbles. A little pink Hello Kitty deal, and the police came and grabbed the little girl because a bubble thing she had. Kids are being arrested for Nerf guns that are orange or being detained. I mean, this is like mind control where you can have all the drones killing people all day. That's beautiful, but you're going to get grabbed for Hello Kitty bubble toys.
Yeah, well, the media companies, I think, are panicking because the frequency of these mass shootings is increasing, and people's are pointing fingers in many directions, including the big media companies. So in the case, they are conglomerates, and they own film divisions, they own TV divisions, and they own print divisions. And they have movies that are showing an enormous amount of mass slaughters, and they've been making billions of dollars with these movies. And they also own news content divisions. And now I think they're completely stupefied because they don't want to upset their franchise selling gory films by upsetting people by showing the real news. I mean, if you go back the history of the past 20 years, there was a great film that came out a while ago called Quiz Show that Robert Redford made that showed the transition from news to game shows that happened in the 1950s. And now we're going through a new transition where news has become no news. You're not allowed to see news anymore. You're only allowed to see simulated events and simulated news, because the real news would, if you watch it and you're injured, we can't, it might create a liability that we're then liable for. Only the controlled violence that's completely insured are we able to show you. So I see this as just another symptom of a society, the American society, fueled with cheap money, cheap drugs, and the rest of it is just disintegrating.
Hold on, we're going to go to a witness. Turn her up. Go ahead. CNN doesn't want you to see this. Here it is for radio.
Why don't you tell me what you saw?
No, actually, I wasn't in the library. It was a friend in the library.
That's right.
And she came to our class 308 and to get somebody out of class and to tell them that there was a lot of shooting going on. Well, of course, that scared us. So what happened was that we all just cut off the lights. We shut down all the computers, and the teacher told us it was a closet just in case, but to be quiet. And we was there for a while, a long time. And of course, we started hearing the helicopters, but we finally got the internet on Channel 11, and that's when we found out what had actually happened. I didn't hear the shooting, but somebody else did.
So because someone came into your classroom, you hunkered down right there in the classroom.
Unbelievable.
Right, that was the only way, and it was...
All right, we'll keep going back to Max Keiser while we run this video, but let me just point out, I've made the point that why don't we just train people to line up back to back so one bullet could kill 3 people? Because, I mean, that's the only step more ridiculous than these colleges and public schools training people to get in fetal positions and wait to be killed. I mean, if there's a mass shooting, people inside need to evacuate. And every time they have to knock the prison windows out. That's what it is, a prison to get out. And look, overall crime, violent crimes going down, FBI numbers, but mass shootings are going up because the media is advertising this. And I want to point out what Max is talking about fakeness. President's band pretended to. Punch up Drudge here for me. Turns out that was all fake. Obama faked meeting with people, faked videos separate from the inauguration. All recorded. It's just, again, the establishment is going to everything being fake because real stuff might get out of hand. This shows the system is desperate. I got to say this, Max, as bad as things are right now, The good news is I see panic and fear in the establishment's eyes. They're power grabbing right now, and they're so insulated. I don't think this is going to go well for them. Let me tell you, I'm not bragging about this. I don't tell this story like I'm a big shot. It's actually pretty creepy and freaks me out and gives me anxiety. I went to Big Bend National Park on the Texas-Mexico border this weekend, and there were people from France there. There were people from New York there, California. In some cases, 80% of people, if I stopped or something, just to sit there and take photos, if I was in a congregated area, would say, Alex Jones, and it wasn't from really Piers Morgan. I'd say, how do you know about me? Oh, I've been listening for years. Listen, when upwards of half or more of people know who I am and say they agree, no matter where I go now, Max, I can go to the hike and bike trail, and in some cases, everyone that comes by is a listener. I'm not bragging and saying I'm a big shot. It's scary, Max, because I don't want to die. They might come after me. I don't know how. Our numbers don't show we're this big. Yeah, 15 million a week. The 15 million a week is not enough to have people from France knowing who you are. And then the next table knows who you are. And then the waitress knows who you are. And then somebody else comes over. I mean, what's going on with that, Max?
Well, I've told you, when I've traveled in the Mideast and around Europe and Asia, and people know me from the TV show, and almost invariably that people say, and I watch Alex Jones, and it's just the power of the internet. People watch your videos, and the message resonates all over the world.
And you're getting recognized all over now. I mean, the establishment better be concerned.
Well, I think your message resonates outside of America more than it does inside of America, because people outside of America have already been dealing with outright tyranny for decades, for generations, and they know exactly what you're talking about. It's only inside America that your message falls on deaf ears in some cases, because America has been very quiet for decades now. Post-World War II, it's been a Shangri-La. It's been a happy town because we've benefited from winning that war, and we've had a 60-year run. But that's coming to an end because a lot of the trends that shaped the good times are finishing, and we're entering a new period. So it's funny that in your own country, you're not as well appreciated, I think, as you are outside of your own country. I can anecdotally tell you that from traveling to these countries and hearing people talk about you with great fondness, more so than I hear people from the U.S.
Well, just to be clear, I didn't even bring this up to say, hey, I'm really big, folks. It's actually creepy. Because what I'm saying is that the word is getting out. Let me show people some of these headlines. Wrangell. Some of the southern areas have cultures we have to overcome. And CNS News even has video of him saying this on the news. Like if you live in the South, you're just bad. If you're a gun over, you're a Nazi, period. Lawmakers introduce bills to ban high-capacity gun clips. Texas sheriffs, I will not enforce law I consider unconstitutional. Same thing with Missouri sheriffs. My point is look at this. Sarkozy to move to London to avoid France's high taxes. I mean, how far can these bureaucrats go till everything collapses?
This week in Switzerland, of course, it's Davos. And Davos is really the primo of all the New World Order get-togethers. I think it might even be more influential than the Bilderberg meetings, because here you have in the highest mountain in Switzerland, really the cream of the cream coming together and cutting deals and doing deals. And so it's happening this week. And this is where now we'll find out in a couple of weeks what they decided to do in Davos. And we'll find out what companies got bought and who's going to go after whom, and a lot of news will come out of it. But I think Davos really in Europe is the #1 event of the year for these guys, these tyrants, like Tim Geithner, who just came out the news that in 2008, 2007, he was selling information to Wall Street about which way the Fed and the Treasury were going to move interest rates. He was alerting the banks through private conversations, essentially selling information, because he'll go to Davos and he'll get paid a lot of money from the folks. That's where the bagmen
They use speeches as a way to get paid off. I remember you on the show.
They show up with bags of money. Geithner, and they're right there with their bank accounts. You know, he's already got caught cooking the books for his own tax returns a few years ago. So they just go to Davos. That's where they hand him the bag full of money. He can stick it in one of the private banks there, and it's there now for the rest of his life. Davos is where Tim Geithner gets the $20 or $30 million just handed to him in precious metals or diamonds or cash, and he stores it away. That's what they do in Davos. That's what it's there for. That's where the New World Order gets paid. Today is payday for the New World Order in Davos, Switzerland. They worked all year. They got their bonuses. They get them today in Davos, this week in Davos. Buffett gets his big satchel of cash. Geithner gets his satchel of cash. Everyone gets paid this week in Davos. So let the parties flow.
I want to shift gears. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we're obviously going to go into overdrive. We're showing pictures here, a live feed from a helicopter that CNN says you're not allowed to see. So we've entered a new Orwellian level here where CNN and other cable news channels are saying they're not going to show live feeds. We have the KHOU feed, so you can see it. They must have huge servers, as this is being watched all over the country. We have the KHOU feed posted at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com right now. But CIA operative takes responsibility for Algerian gas plant attack. In the video, Mokhtar said to be the mastermind behind the terrorist attack by the Islamist Al-Mujahideen brigade in the gas complex in Algeria, takes credit for the operation. Now, let me show on the document cam viewers this. Radio listeners can go to Infowars.com. This is confirming what the London Independent was saying. Terror in northern Africa are Westerners pulling the strings. And it has the Prime Minister, Sayal, telling reporters that it's an English accent groups leading the al-Qaeda forces. Well, we know al-Qaeda works for the West. They've given them Libya and Syria. They've now taken over Libya. They're deploying into other areas and then using this as an excuse for NATO through AFRICON to invade and run raids into these areas. Just absolutely amazing. And U.S. begins transporting French troops and equipment into Mali with another staged event as a pretext. I mean, how unveiled does this have to get where the West publicly runs al-Qaeda? I mean, does that not add massive credibility to everybody that pointed out that government was involved in 9/11?
Well, Tony Blair, give him credit for setting up the collapse of Libya, his relationship with Gaddafi. He profited handsomely from that. He's a Davos guy, Davos man, Tony Blair. He's cutting deals all over the world. And, of course, Mali is the collateral damage of Libya because all those weapons suddenly found their way onto the street and into Algeria and into Mali. And so there's the whole, what they call the Maghreb, the North African region, is now become, controlled by those folks that are at war with the banksters, the Western interests that have been, screwing with them for a number of decades. And the response from the U.S. and Britain seems to be completely wrong-headed. They don't understand why the problem started. They don't understand why the problem continues, and they have no idea how to end the problem. So they're just going to continue to foster continuation and spread of enemies. When they go, they send drones into Pakistan or these places and just murder people indiscriminately. They're breeding problems. And, of course, they don't have the money to pay for all this, so they have to borrow more money. Who are they borrowing it from? China. China's now at war with Japan, who's allied with the U.S. So we're in World War III right now. It's being fought in the currency pits. It's a currency war, and it brings us back to the fundamental reality that countries like Germany are repatriating their gold. The Netherlands is repatriating their gold because they don't trust it anymore. They want out of Dodge. They want their gold, and they don't want to play this game anymore. And that's why gold is going to go to $10,000 an ounce, because the gold is not in these vaults. It's been sold already to pay for these stupid, ridiculous wars. How
are they going to cover it now that these countries are all demanding their gold out of the private Federal Reserve? Geithner's over there, hanging out at Davos, the public Bilderberg meeting. I mean, it's just their craziness.
They're going to cut them a check. They're going to cut them a check and say, okay, we owe you $30 billion in gold. Here's a check for $30 billion. And these countries will say, wait a minute, we want the gold. And they'll say, sorry, we don't have it. Here's the check. Sorry, it's tough luck. And that's when they're going to, that's when all hell's going to break loose, because then you're going to realize that the gold has been sold, it's not there, and you've got.
Let's cut to this female reporter real fast talking to the police. She's getting the statements.
Trying to kind of find out what the latest and greatest information may be as far as the
CNN
official source
will not
goes.
let you see this. They do not want you to know what really
walk
happened.
Over here and can give us
Very
any
suspicious.
of that information, we are going to bring that update to you. But just to sort of recap what we believe we do know at this point is before she was pulled away to get the latest information, I did learn that the person that they do have in custody, they are unsure if that person is actually a shooter or is actually a person who may have been involved in the altercation that led to all of this at this point.
All right, if this isn't staged, you watch, it's going to be gang-related.
The ability of trying to get some of
because, I don't know,
70-some%
of the shootings they call mass shootings are gang-related, which is still bad, but it's two adults shooting each other, you know, over the gangster culture that's so popular. Also pushed, I tell you, Max Keiser is our guest. This is just amazing. MaxKeiser.com. Max, we're going to do a little bit of overdrive if you can do it, because I've been cutting you short here, and I got so many questions. When we come back, what will it look like, you know, as the countries say, give us our money, they say no, that's already happening. What will that do? Will that create even more uncertainty with the IOUs? And how long can the globalists pay off the Chinese, the Germans, and others with bags of cash that is being devalued? And what happens once the dollar does lose its status? I mean, what type of bonker insanity? These dollars have been buying everybody off so far by the globalists. I guess the globalists will just move to another country and we'll get the blame for it. I think that's the answer. But we're going to find out, you know, is Max Keiser going to be right in April or within a few months of that? Is it going to be the next level of collapse? And what will that signify? I'm Alex Jones, and this is the Info War. You know, a few months ago, a listener, if you're watching on TV, sent us this Obama snow globe. And when we shake it up, it was our Christmas present, it's totally and completely filthy inside, which I thought was fitting. It's clouded and looks like there's bacteria or sewage in it. So let me shake this up for everybody and show the viewers a document cam shot. There you go. So thanks for the Christmas present. It turned out even better than we thought. It came in the official packaging and everything. So probably made in China and probably has like fetid urine in it or something. I don't know. But there you go. Going back to Max Keiser of MaxKeiser.com. You can follow us on Twitter at RealAlexJones. And where is the best Twitter for you, Max? There's several big ones out there.
Well, just Max Keiser. So it's Twitter /Max Keiser.
Okay, you heard my long-winded question before the break. What does the next stage of collapse look like, and what will happen?
Well, I'm just reading Zero Hedge. They got a story up right now. Mervyn King, Bank of England, is talking about rebalancing to avoid a currency war, and that's a big moment, because he acknowledges that we're in a currency war. The UK pound is going to have to be revalued down sharply. That means purchasing power in the UK is going to collapse. As you know, I moved to London from Paris to observe and to report on the collapse of the UK pound and the UK economy, because it's one of the most vulnerable economies in the world, because they have so little gold after Gordon Brown sold most of it back in 2001. So this is another shoe to drop. This is another chapter in the collapse of these paper money empires, and of course gold and silver are acting fantastically well so far this year, and it's just playing out exactly as we said it would over the past couple of years, and 2013 looks to be a continuation.
So looking into your crystal ball, things are right on schedule.
Pretty much. I see that the economy, that growth needed to pay the debt, is a quantity that will never come to pass. And I'll give you a good example of how to determine that. The amount of debt in the world, or even in the U.S. with its many, many trillions of dollars of debt, to pay that debt off, it would, of course, be a subset of the tax being collected on growth. Okay, so how much tax and how much growth would be required to pay the debt? Well, all growth in the modern economy is tied to oil. And if you were to burn 1 trillion barrels of oil, approximately the same amount of barrels of oil that have been burned so far in the last 100 years, if you were to burn another 1 trillion barrels of oil, you would not generate enough taxable income to pay off the current debt. doesn't give you an idea of how much debt there is. So, in other words, this debt is never going to be paid off. Jobs are never coming back. Wages will continue to crash, and the bond market collapse is coming, and gold and silver are going to go a lot higher. There's just no way around it.
Max, we're going to do a little bit of overdrive here when we come back, but all I can say is this. You look at how they've tried to destroy women, destroy the family, how MTV has pushed gangster and jackass cultures on people, how it's been sold that men are supposed to be weak and stupid or thug-like. I mean, why would the system try to degenerate society? I guess for the casino gulag model that you talked about, and it's all happening.
Well, you said a moment ago, you talked about what's the end game for the elites. I mean, look what Glenn Beck is doing. He's trying to create he's got $2 billion. He wants to create his own village, his own society down there in Texas. The Koch brothers want to buy an island in Detroit and create their own, their own society. You've got 2 or 3 examples now of these elites wanting to build their own castles, their own neo-feudal,
they've said that's the model, and then they're going to call it libertarian. Globalism collapses things, then they exempt themselves from it.
They call it libertarian.
Stay there. We're going to come back and talk about fake libertarians. You see, the globalists have exempted themselves from all the laws, regulations, and rules that they've created and pushed, so that only they can operate. And so they're going to have city-states that are outside of the law and given special licensure by the power structure so the elites can live in those. They're then going to get the scared middle class to pay exorbitant prices to live within the castle walls. And we actually covered that in a bunch of recent reports we did last year, breaking that down. And again, after they collapse and suck everything together, then, like this big Bilderberg group member has talked about the floating cities and all the rest of it, I'm going to do a special report on this. Then they exempt themselves, and you've got to go live in their system if you have any money. I mean, they figured it all out. That's why they're getting rid of nation states with a global crime syndicate above it, who then will get their own private zones where they can operate however they want. And yeah, can you imagine? It's like Zeitgeist, living in Glenn Beck's $2 billion libertarian heaven in Texas. And I knew they were looking at stuff outside Austin. I fact, that's how I knew Glenn Beck was moving to Texas before he did. And I said it could be Austin because they were looking at properties here. And I just hope he doesn't move and set up a bit. I mean, whatever. It's a free country, I guess. He can come set up his utopia here. I know I'm not going to be living in it, but see, if you're an insider, you're going to be able to get deals as a stakeholder under Agenda 21 to have lesser taxes. It's going to generate its own power, its own food, so you live in kind of like the Glenn Beck gulag. Man, I tell you, they've really thought all this out, Max Keiser.
I think you're going to see one of these, whether it's the Koch brothers or Glenn Beck. I think it's going to be another situation like the Hale Bopp Comet cult or the Jim Jones Guyana cult. They become very insular. After 10 years, people start going mad, and then there's mass suicide. I mean, that's where Glenn Beck is going. We're going to read about him in 10 years as the guy who convinced 2,000 people to drink the Kool-Aid and commit suicide chasing his idea of whatever he's mumbling on about. Because when you secede from society and you set yourself up as, in some way, living according to an ethos that is completely divorced from anything that we know and appreciate as a democratic system, let's call it, or an American system or an egalitarian system, you become prone to egomaniacal, dictator-like psychopaths like Glenn Beck, who rise up and realize that the only way that he can escape facing the reality of his own shortcomings is to convince everyone and himself to kill themselves. And that's where he's headed.
Well, I'm going to tell you where he's headed. It's headed to sell real estate plan. You know what's incredible? I was actually approached, and I think, oh my gosh, I just remembered. I was approached by a successful businessman in Dallas about a month ago, actually, for this plan. I think Beck must have, I know he was talking to Beck, and Beck, I even know where it is. Oh my gosh. See, I didn't even know about this. You started talking about it. I've been out of town for 4 days. And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, he's announcing it. He's not saying where. I know where the idea came from. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It's a shopping mall that's gone bankrupt outside Dallas. That's breaking news right there. At least I know Beck is looking at it. Oh, my gosh, can you imagine going and living in a shut-down shopping mall that has shops? That then they're going to have stuff built around it where everybody moves, which wouldn't be a bad idea if it was his own incorporated city. And I guess that's the plan. Wow, I know Glenn Beck's plan, unless I'm wrong, because I was called by another businessman who I know in the DFW area, and he was telling me he was getting together with other talk show hosts, and that he'd recently met with Glenn Beck.
Well, I understand that he's raised $2 billion for this project. So, it's a very well-funded real estate project. They're going to live a libertarian dream. And as we were saying, there's libertarianism and then there's fake libertarianism.
Hold on, we got to do one more segment. Can you do it?
Yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, because I want to talk about this. Peter Thiel, the Bilderberg guy. Glenn Beck now says he is the leader of the libertarians, while Ron Paul supporters, he said, need to have the army used on them. So that doesn't sound too libertarian to me. We'll be right back. My gosh, I am flipping out because I actually know about Glenn Beck's operation. I forgot about this. Well, it's a terrible shooting, but not as bad as it could have been. And as I said, if it's not staged or some mentally ill Prozac head copycatter, I've been saying this for over an hour since it broke, and then we had no information. Only because it's usually only one of three things. It's not hard to make these predictions. CNN, who says they'll decide what we're allowed to see and would not show live feeds of it, as we have been doing for TV viewers, playing clips for radio listeners. 2 students wounded in Houston college shooting. Officials, not servants, believe 2 students were wounded in crossfire as 2 people shot at each other at a Texas community college Tuesday. So gang-related, folks. It's going to end up being, because the culture is be a cool gangster. You know, all these rappers and people that end up shooting each other just to prove they're men. It's so horrible. And there you go. One of the shooters was also injured and is in custody in the North Harris campus of Lone Star College. Spokesman Jed Young said the other shooter fled the campus, he said. The police believe the danger has been mitigated. So hundreds of police, SWAT teams, you name it. And meanwhile, it's going to be gang-related. I mean, like I said, most what they call mass shootings are rival gangs shooting each other. At least 3 shot at Houston area community college. They use the New York numbers of, what was it, 9 people shot? The shooter shot his estranged boss and then was walking away, and the police shot a whole bunch of people in New York. Got 9 people. And then also some repair guy was on the bridge doing repair, and they just came up and shot him. And then another veteran's car broke down. They just pulled up and shot him. And they count those as the shooting numbers. They'll call it a criminal event now. I mean, they count those 9 people in mass shooting numbers. Just incredible. Yeah, at least 3 shot at Houston area community college, but one of them is one of the shooters reportedly. One of the alleged shooters, and 2 of them are people shot in the crossfire. Thank God it wasn't another goth devil worshiper. Because you got it's always the same. Goth devil worshiper in psychiatric care, seeing psychiatrists and psychologists on serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I mean, it's amazing. Harrison Clyburn burned to devil worship. God, and I'm not bashing folks that like to wear black and all that. You know, there's different groups of people like that. It's just that's the MO. Wow. Guaranteed it's going to come out now gang-related, and that's terrible news. But thank God it's not 30 dead people, because they would really go to town with that. And I still believe, with all the hype we're seeing, that they're going to stage some false flags. That's why they're so confident. Max Keiser, thanks for holding into Overdrive here with us. Again, TV host, syndicated radio host, Max Keiser at maxkeiser.com. If you just tuned in, I'm Alex Jones of prisonplanet.com and prisonplanet.tv. Max, for those just joining us, I don't want to sit here just for the sake of it and bash Glenn Beck. And you mentioned Glenn Beck says he has $2 billion and is going to build a libertarian utopia. I know he's been looking at land outside Austin, because I talked to one of the people involved. Let's leave it at that. And I was horrified by it. Then it was actually Dallas that he moved to. And then I got a call by a nice businessman I know who's a patriot. And he said that, hey, you know, there's this shopping mall that's bankrupted. We can make it all guns, patriot stuff, survival stuff, and then maybe have a community around that, because the worst real estate is North Dallas, you know, in Texas. It's just plunging. That's the worst area in Texas, overall good state. And it may not be the same deal, but I know this guy's met with Glenn Beck because he told me about that too. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that's where he got the idea, because Beck doesn't ever have his own ideas. It's always somebody else's. I'm going to make a phone call after the show today. But it's the idea of Peter Thiel, the big Bilderberg guy, Thiel or Teal? I always get it wrong. Yep. Say it again?
Teal.
Yeah, that mic's so bad, I can't understand a word coming out of it. Hold on. Thiel, yeah. Yeah, TH, yeah. That Bilderberg guy is the one, pushing this. But again, they bankrupt things, then make themselves exempt from the very taxes, and then go live in these command bases. That's what the globalists have said is their model. So I guess Glenn Beck's just trying to copy that. Now, I've been ranting. Go ahead, Max Keiser.
Well, first of all, he's a carpetbagger. Who wants this Yankee down in Austin, Texas? I mean, don't you Texans have more self-respect than this? I mean, you got to run this guy out of town. Shouldn't there be, y'all got the guns, y'all got the manpower. Why are you letting this carpetbagger come down to Austin, Texas and set up his libertarian utopian paradise, which is nothing but a scam, media scam, in your backyard? That's an insult. Alex?
I'm just speechless here. It's just things are getting so dystopic.
It's an insult. How dare he go move into the holy land of Austin, Texas? It's not going to be weird anymore. Instead of saying, keep it weird, Austin, Texas, it's going to be like, welcome to Glenn Beckville, where everybody is boring media jacked idiot. He's really lowered the value of that town tremendously if you let this carpetbagger into town. And can't you do something? You got listeners down there. Isn't there something you can do, Alex? We need you to stop this from happening.
Well, I don't know if he's moving to Austin. I know he was looking at stuff here and pieces of land and stuff. All I know is that I found out from people that worked in and around him that indeed he did focus on everything we did, had people watching it. And when we see, he takes what we do and then spins it, and then he kind of just walks around in these weird, blue jeans and a little nerd outfit, all creepy and weird. And a lot of his followers are good people, but a big contingent of them are like into the wimpiness and into the whole. And then he always sabotages libertarians at key points. So I feel like he's on my six. And it just is creepy knowing what I know about him, that he is constantly worried about what I'm up to. And I just don't know what to say about it.
His whole career is based on a bad imitation of Alex Jones. I mean, before Glenn Beck came on Fox News, there was Alex Jones, and you brought to the media world somebody who wore their heart on their sleeve in a very obvious way. And then Glenn Beck did this on Fox News, where he would well up and get very emotional over things, and he's basically doing an Alex Jones impression. But he would not cover the stories that Alex Jones covers because, of course, he doesn't want to upset Fox News and his media masters, and he's parlayed that into this new $2 billion fandango down in Austin, Texas, is what I'm hearing, where he's going to build this utopian version of what I call fake libertarianism, which means fake libertarianism means he'll say, well, I'm going to borrow $2 billion at 0% interest rate, and if this works, I'm going to keep all the profits, and if it goes bust, then everyone in Texas is going to have to absorb the losses. And you say, well, why do you get to borrow $2 billion at 0%? He'll say, oh, I'm a libertarian. That's not what libertarian is.
He supported the banker bailout.
Well, yeah, that's not libertarianism. That's not even capitalism. That's outright fascism. He's a fascist. He accuses you of being a fascist, and yet he's the guy engaged in a $2 billion fascist enterprise combining the banksters with land speculators in Austin. That's fascism. He's right there in your neighborhood.
Well, he's looking at Austin. He's also looking at the North Dallas suburbs area, where it's probably...
If you were so concerned, he should check out Libya or Mali. Why doesn't Glenn Beck go there to build his libertarian paradise? That's where it's needed. If he really believes in the power of capitalism and libertarianism, why doesn't he go to Mali and show the people there what Glenn Beck can do?
But let's elaborate on this. Let's elaborate on this. We've actually done news reports on this. We cover it in Endgame. People think of globalism as getting rid of countries. They actually break countries into smaller pieces to control them. They create regions like London or the Vatican that are outside of law and can do whatever they want. Israel's a similar thing. They build their own zones. And that's what they're actually saying, Peter Thiel and others, is that they're going to establish this. It's just amazing that we're actually, like you said, we're going back to feudalism.
It is going back to feudalism, and I have been saying that for a few years, neo-feudalism. But this Peter Thiel character, of course, he made his money with PayPal. And PayPal, of course, was, along with Visa and MasterCard, shutting down WikiLeaks when it became, and they also are extrajudiciously shutting people down that they don't want them to get their views, like, with copyright and other issues. They just shut them down. And that's where Peter Thiel comes from. So he made his bones engaging with the banksters directly through PayPal. That's where he comes from. So now he's going to take that experience, and he's with the Bilderberg Group now. He's with these folks, and they're meeting, and they're doing their deals where they're going to try to create these little cul-de-sacs, these little Disney-esque fantasy worlds where they're going to be surrounded by an army. You've got media ideologues like Glenn Beck at the center, and within 5 or 6 years, all the children are going to look like Glenn Beck, but they'll all be inbreeding, so some will have 3 arms. And 2.
All right, that's enough. I don't want to get into a Beck bashing fest. It's just that, it's just incredible. He is out to get me. And you notice, I'm not out to get Rush Limbaugh. I'm not out to get Michael Savage. I don't talk about, what's the other one's name? I don't listen to it. What's his name? The guy on Fox News, Sean Hannity.
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly?
Yeah.
Hannity,
well, the point is they're not after me. So I'm not talking about him. It's Glenn Beck is always, look how he moved up the road from me. I mean, it's like.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I need to get this guy out of my life. He's super creepy.
Well, he's a stalker. He's stalking you. So, I mean, you got to deal with it. In some way, there's got to be enough people in Austin that support Alex Jones to do whatever needs to be done to keep Glenn Beck out. I mean,
stop it. He'll take that as a serious thing. No, if he wants to buy property and do something and become a libertarian, that's great. In fact, I want to think that he's becoming a better guy. The problem is he's still, really making stuff up about us. I mean, I'm not a fascist, folks. I'm a wild liberal in the Thomas Jefferson vein. None of these names mean anything. I'm called a right-winger today because I oppose Obama. I am a true constitutionalist. Max, I'd like to believe you're the same thing. I mean, a classical liberal, right?
I'm actually a closet Texan.
Well, you lived in France, you lived in New York, you lived everywhere, and now you've moved to London to cover that. Maybe when it all collapses, you and I will both move into Glenn Beck's neighborhood. He won't be able to stop us. We'll buy a cult compound right next door to him. He can't say no, he's a libertarian. Maybe we start.
Alamo. Remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo.
Hello, I'm Alex Jones. Myself, my family.